Okay, good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of council to order, March 25th, 2025, 6 p.m., Council Chambers, Town of St. Mary's. The Council for the Town of St. Mary's acknowledges with gratitude and respect that we're gathering on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse, giving thanks for all creation. We are broadcasting live this evening on our Town of St. Mary's YouTube channel. I'll begin this evening by asking for declarations of pecuniary interest, starting with Councillor Craigmile.
None.
Councillor Edney.
None.
Councillor Luna.
None.
Councillor Lucas.
None.
Councillor Pridham.
None.
Councillor Alward.
None.
And I have none. The agenda was circulated. Are there any errors, omissions, problems with the agenda? Seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion that the March 25th, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be accepted as presented. Someone like to move that. Councillor Craigmile moves. Councillor Luna seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 4 is our public input period. I've received nothing. I'll defer to our clerk. Was there anything received today? Okay, seeing nothing, we will move on to item 5, which is our delegation. This evening, we have the Ontario Clean Water Agency with us on their fourth quarter reporting. We have Mark Bow and Renee Hornick, who your council is very familiar with, and so the floor is yours if you'd please present.
Your Worship and members of council, I am pleased to present the fourth quarter operational report for 2024 for the St. Mary's water and wastewater systems. So this covers from October to December 2024. With me tonight is Ms. Renee Hornick, and I'm going to start with the water report first. During this quarter, there were no non-compliances reported, with staff taking over 130 bacteriological and chemical samples. The major maintenance completed for the water system can be seen on page 3 and 4 of this report. Well number 1, staff repaired an 8-inch gate valve. At well number 2, a 6-inch pressure reducing valve was replaced with a new one due to age. Upon the distribution system, there were 2 water main breaks this quarter, one at Queen Street West in Ontario and the other at Queen Street West and, forgive me for my, I think it's Pelletier. I always have a problem with that one, for a total of 7 in 2024. The Wellington Street Road reconstruction was completed. Part of that reconstruction, a new water main was commissioned on Victoria Street between Wellington and Water Street. There was 1 water service repair on Church Street North, and other than a few internal plumbing issues and water shutoffs, there was nothing to report. Do you have any questions on that?
Okay, thank you. Questions with regards to the water report? Okay, wastewater, please.
Okay, we'll move on to the wastewater report. The wastewater treatment plant performed well in the fourth quarter of 2024 with no non-compliances. Flows at the wastewater treatment plant were at 77% of its rated capacity for this quarter and 83% of its rated capacity for the year of 2024. The major maintenance at the wastewater treatment plant can be seen on page 4 of the report. The maintenance that occurred was the pump for the yard hydrants was replaced. There were 5 variable speed drives that were replaced at the plant. The centrifuge for the Listec process was inspected and the bearings replaced. The centrifuge communications to the SCADA system was repaired. And for the collection system at the Emily Street pumping station, pump number 1 was rebuilt and reinstalled. On the final effluent, other than high flows in December, the wastewater plant performed well over the quarter. Do you have any questions on that report?
Thank you. Questions with regards to the wastewater report? Councillor Alward?
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just wondering why there's less preventative maintenance this quarter than the others.
This quarter, it kind of levels. Some quarters are higher, some quarters are lower. So this one, there was less to do. Yep.
Would you mind, it's not in the report, but would you mind just giving us an update how things are going at the
Yes,
plant?
yes, I was expecting that question.
And of course, as you should, but, but
Yeah.
just in terms of, there's a lot of
So-
exciting things.
We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. The odor control unit has been in operation for about 2 weeks now. The staff are seeing reduced odors in some of the process, like in the Listec process. It takes a bit for that media to build up. It goes through a media, and there's a biofilm that helps reduce the H2S gas. So it's working. The grit removal process, it has been up and running for about 2 weeks now as well, about a week and a half. And we're doing just tweaking it out, but we are removing grit from that process now as well. So we're just waiting on the admin building. They're just finishing up now, so hopefully we're in soon.
The only other question I had, and we talked about it before, but when we look at the number 83%, seems like a high number. Can you talk a bit about, just so the public and everyone understands capacity and where we're at and sort of where we're headed in the future? Do you mind just giving a bit of an overview about that?
Yeah, so the plant is rated at 5,560 cubic meters per day. So it's all rated on your flows. So if you have peak flows during rainstorms, of course, your capacity is going to be higher. And any days we're over that 5,560 cubic meters per day, we have to do extra sampling. So as the plant, as your town grows, as we fix infiltration problems, and Dave Blake can speak on that, on your sanitary sewers, you're seeing increased flows and less flows through infiltration, but when you hit a certain threshold, you have to start looking at expansion, which I believe the town is now looking at future expansion for higher capacities going to the sewage treatment plant.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? All right, thank you for your report this evening.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, so the suggested motion is that the presentation of the Ontario Clean Water Agency regarding the fourth quarter 2024 water and wastewater reporting be received. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to acceptance of minutes, item number 6. The first set of minutes we have to look at is the regular council meeting from March 11th, 2025. Are there any errors, omissions, or problems with those minutes? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion that the March 11th, 2025 regular council meeting minutes be approved by council and signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Someone to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Luna, second by Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next item is with regards to the minutes for the Strategic Priorities Committee, and as a result of those discussions, there are 2 motions that we will bring to council as per the recommendations of the Strategic Priorities Committee. So the first is the minutes. Is there any problems with the minutes? Okay, so the motion will read that the March 18th, 2025 Strategic Priorities Committee meeting minutes be received and that minute 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 be raised for consideration. Someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Pridham, second by Councillor Alward. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. So as a result of the discussions, the first minute, I'll just put the motion on the floor, and then we'll see if there's anything anyone wanted to raise. The council directs staff to continue working with the Station Gallery to implement their new business plan for the remainder of 2025 and into early 2026 until such time the decision can be made about the gallery's long-term operating plan in relation to 14 Church Street, and the council authorized staff to work with gallery staff to open the north room of the Via Station currently used for gallery educational programming to other arts culture groups for programming to test the market relating to 14 Church Street concepts. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham. Is there a seconder? Councillor Craigmile. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Sorry? Okay. Moving on to the next item, as a result of the discussions at the strategic priorities, I'll put the motion on the floor that the space needs assessment for 14 Church Street be adopted with the following minor edits: addition of staff room and washroom and basement, maintain as much natural light as possible by removing walls, although some rooms with privacy are necessary, makerspace redesign location of small study to improve flow, ensure clear sight lines for staff who are monitoring the space, ensure sufficient small spaces and individual meeting rooms, consider for including temporary and interchangeable space for displaying library materials, consideration be given to move staircase, and that when the draft concept design is returned to council for consideration, that a conceptual operational plan is presented, and that staff determine if construction may be phased and what the established total construction costs would be. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lucas. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to the next item with regards to U.S. Tariff information. Jenna, is there anything needed to speak to this at all, or just? No, this is just for information purposes. Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor. It was as printed in the package. Whereas the United States has announced its intent to impose tariffs on all Canadian goods destined for the U.S., whereas these proposed tariffs threaten the stability of local industries and businesses and could severely impact our economy, workers, and trade relations with the U.S., and whereas the town of St. Mary's is committed to protecting its local businesses, ensuring fair trade practices, and maintaining a competitive environment for all industries, therefore be it resolved that the town of St. Mary's supports Stand for Canada and the provincial and federal governments on the measures they have put in place in response to the proposed U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods, and ask that they take any and all measures to protect the interests of the provinces, territories, and Canada in any upcoming trade negotiations, and that federal and provincial governments remove any impediments to municipalities preferring Canadian companies and services for capital projects and other suppliers, and that the provincial and federal governments take action to remove trade barriers between provinces as a response to U.S. tariffs and support Canadian businesses, and that staff be directed to bring back a report detailing a temporary procurement policy that integrates and addresses these concerns, and that staff consult with local industry regarding their suggestions and strategies to respond to U.S. tariffs and report back to council. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. I believe we had mentioned that where we wanted this letter sent, does that need to be included with the recommendation? No?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Luna, it's an automatic that we will send it to AMO and it'll go to the Premier as well as the Prime Minister's office. And that's what we do as our normal process.
Other municipalities or no?
Through AMO, they will share that, yes.
Okay. Councillor Craig Maude?
Thank you, Worship. I just had a question. I just needed a little clarity on, when we say Stand for Canada, Canadian versus American, what happens in the situation where you might have an American-owned company, which is local and has numerous workers at it? So I'm wondering if we need the wording in there somehow to support local.
I'll defer to staff for that. I know this originated out of the city of Brampton from the correspondence we received previously in terms of supporting it that way. And I know that there is a committee, the city of Stratford has started that we had our first meeting. I see Andre's on the line. Andre, maybe you can pick up on that as well.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in relation, one of the things we discussed at the Strategic Priorities Committee was exactly to that point, what definitions would we, if we did make some changes from a procurement standpoint, what are the definitions that we would treat those changes when it comes to what is a U.S. company or a U.S. supplier? So that is something we want to touch on in our report back, or providing council some options around what that type of definition might look like. The challenge, of course, is with those definitions comes how do you make sure that those definitions are correct, or however you want to define that. City of Toronto, for example, in their policy has attempted to define that as whereby their headquarters are located in the U.S. and 70% of their employees are in the U.S. But again, going back, what we discussed at our strategic priorities committee is that there's lots of American-related businesses with either ties here, or have employees here, or have properties here. It does become a little bit challenging from that regard to define local versus national versus U.S. But we will attempt to provide council some intel on that.
Councilor Luna? Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. And to your point, Councillor Craig, the third whereas says the town of St. Mary's is committed to protecting its local businesses. So it is in there that we want to be aware of our local businesses and do the best we can. As well.
Okay. Okay, any further? Okay, seeing nothing further, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to correspondence, we have a number of pieces of correspondence this week. The first being a letter regarding the St. Mary's Poppy Project. The letter was a request to put crochet or knitted poppies on various places throughout the town. I understand they have met with the Director of the Public Works, so there is a plan, and concerns about removal and where they can be in sightlines and stuff is being addressed by staff. Did anyone want to have any questions or want to speak to the letter? Councilor Pridham?
Thank you, through your worship. I've seen this display in Stratford and on one of the bridges there, and it looks quite stunning, and it would be a kind of a nice opportunity for St. Mary's to remind daily of the remembrance that we all serve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Would you like to move the motion?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll put the motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Pridham, that the correspondence from Lynn Lewis and Deb Hutton regarding the St. Mary's Poppy Project be received, and that council supports the request to place crochet and knitted poppies on various bridge and stair railings throughout the downtown in alignment with the Remembrance Day banner program period for 2025. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Luna seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next item is with regards to a letter from Mr. Steve Coverly with regards to a water bill. There is a staff report later in the evening where we can have a discussion and talk about staff's recommendations. Are there any questions at this time with regards to Mr. Coverly's correspondence? Okay, so then we'll receive the correspondence as councilors can, and then we will talk about it at length, I'm assuming later on in the evening. So then the motion would be that the correspondence from Steve Coverly regarding a water bill request be received. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Craig Mile, seconded. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next piece of correspondence, again with regards to a water bill from Ms. Marg DeLong. Again, there is a staff recommendation, a report further on in the agenda that we can discuss the correspondence and any recommendations to staff. Is there any questions with regards to Ms. DeLong's letter at this point? Okay, I'll ask for a motion then that the correspondence from Margaret DeLong regarding a water bill request be received. Someone going to move that? Moved by Councillor Luna, second by Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next piece of correspondence is from Mr. Larry Paff with regards to the pillars at the West Quarry. Any comments or questions with regards to this correspondence? Seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion. The correspondence from Larry Paff regarding a planned destruction of 6 quarry pillars be received. So I'm going to move that. Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded. Councillor Edney, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next piece of correspondence is from Mr. Dan Snyder, Architectural Conservancy Ontario, regarding the pillars at the quarry. Does anyone wants to speak to this piece of correspondence? Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor that the correspondence from the Architectural Conservancy Ontario, Stratford, Perth County, regarding quarry pillars be received. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded. Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, moving on to monthly reports. The first one up is Public Works monthly report. Mr. Kelly, please. Are you there?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a big agenda, so I'll be brief. Energy Demand Management Plan was received at Green Committee last week. They've recommended a few little tweaks. We'll bring their comments and the amendments or changes to it in April. We had a couple variances. We had a little equipment trailer stolen from the MOC, and we had one of our fuel pumps fail. We're able to secure a refurbished one. So other than that, just normal spring kind of end of winter activities. Take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions regards Public Works report? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion that PW 21-2025 March monthly report Public Works be received for information. Someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded. Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next up is our annual wastewater summary report. Mr. Blake, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is presented to Council to advise of the completion of the 2024 annual reporting for the wastewater treatment plant and the collection system. There is a lot of information within the report. It's quite thick, so I just wanted to bring a couple of key items to Council's attention. As you heard earlier with the Aqua delegation, the daily average flows were once again above 80% of the plant's average daily capacity at 83% in 2024, and that's compared to 82% in 2023. This can partially be attributed to the wet weather we had in July last year that caused the sewage plant to receive higher than normal flows in what would normally have been probably the driest part of the year. Biosolids production was down slightly in 2024 when compared to the previous year. This isn't unnormal, and it kind of ebbs and flows from one year to the other. But the facility was able to meet our requirements to maintain our CFIA fertilizer registration in 2024. There were no overflows or emergency bypass events that occurred in 2024 for the sewage facility. And there was 41 days, or approximately 11% of the time, that the sewage plant operated outside of normal operating conditions. These were all attributed to wet weather events that elevated flows beyond the facility's design average day flow. So with this, I just wanted to point out that the facility is designed to handle and manage flows in excess of that average daily flow rate of 5,560. And the facility does have a peaking factor of approximately 2.5 times that. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions with regards to the wastewater report? Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Worship. Dave, just to refresh my memory, when you say there were no overflows or primary bypass, you mean there was no untreated sludge going into the river? No untreated, is that correct?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Craigmile, that would be correct. So we had no planned bypasses to any water courses or anything like that that would have occurred in the year.
So with that many high water rain events, I mean, that's pretty good for the facility, I would say, with the throughputs of 11% of the time.
Yeah, the facility does perform well. It's rated, like its peaking factor is rated for a little over 14,000 cubic meters a day. So when we do get those high rains and snow melts and wet weather events, it does have some capacity there. And as Mark noted in his delegation earlier, we have been working to cut down on our amount of I&I across the system. So we don't see the extremes that we once did. So whether that's a fruit of the labor that we've been working towards, but we still see those high flows, just they don't seem to be as high as they used to be.
Councilor Edney?
Thank you, through your worship. Dave, I had a question prepared, and you answered it in your opening there. What the actual capacity is, and you say it's 2.5 times what we consider the capacity. I was hoping there was at least 20%, but so why do we do that?
Through your worship to Councillor Edney, so that's a good question, and it's basically a design buffer. So when we design sewers or treatment processors, there's always a buffer capacity in there. So sewer collection systems, they take into account that there will be some inflow and infiltration get into the pipes, and they're designed to accommodate that extra flow or extra load. It's no different than with the sewage plant. It has that capacity in there. Different parts of the plant have different rated capacities as well. So the facility as a whole is designed and approved to treat 5,560 cubic meters. It does have that peaking factor to 14,250 cubic meters a day. And as Mark alluded to earlier as well, we are navigating down the process of a Class EA for the facility to expand it further to account for growth as well. So that'll well position us for the future as well.
Thank you.
Councilor Craigmile?
Thank you, Worship. Dave, I'd like to thank you for that summary report because it's much easier than going through that large detailed report and trying to make sense of it. But I did flip through a bunch of pages, and one thing that there was a lot of data, a lot of analytical data, all dated 2024, and then you get right near the end and there was 4 or 5 sodium numbers from 2020. Why is that?
Through your worship to Councillor Craigmile, is that on the annual water report or the annual wastewater report?
It was probably on the water report. Sorry.
If it's on the water report, I can speak to it now, or I can speak to it when I do that one. It's
sure.
Okay. Councilor Pridham?
Just a question about the high-strength incoming effluents from the industries that cause problems. Are the industries identified, and can they use a different kind of treatment, or is there any way to help the treatment plant by discussion with those industries?
Through your worship to Councillor Pridham, so we do work with industries within the community. Many of them are part of the industrial surcharge program within the community. So they have specific agreements in place for discharges that they're allowed to discharge up to. And then ways for the town to recover costs that are associated with the extra strength discharges. Sometimes compliance with those limits is a challenge. And we do work hand in hand with industry. We have, if levels get out of hand, we'll reach out and see what's going on. Sometimes there's a chemical cleaner that got switched that they're able to switch back to or find an alternative that'll help with what we receive at the sewage plant. And similarly, a lot of them are now running pretreatment facilities or working towards pretreatment facilities that ultimately will meet the agreement discharge requirements that we're looking for, and then has a trickle-down effect at the sewage plant as well. So it's easier to treat some of that stuff at the source than it is for us to handle it across the community as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, Sir Mayor. Just one follow-up on that. As I was looking through that chart, I had the same thoughts as Councillor Pridham, and the one industrial user basically jumped from the bottom to well above the top for the last 3 quarters of the year. Is that a change in their process, and is that something that's concerning that that's jumped up, or is that something that we'll see in 2025 come back down again?
So through your worship to Councillor Lucas, so that's a good question. It's something we're working through right now with the industry to try and bring that back down and ensure that they're within their limits that they're permitted to.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on the wastewater report? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put a motion on the floor then that PW 17-2025 wastewater annual summary report be received for information. Someone willing to move that? Councillor Craigmile moves. Seconder, Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next report is the annual water system report. Mr. Blake, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is presented to Council to advise of the completion of the 2024 annual report on the water system. This report is a requirement under Ontario Regulation 170 and the Safe Drinking Water Act and is provided to Council as the owner of the water system. Again, there's a lot of information within the report, a lot of data, a lot of sample results. So I'll just bring a couple of items, key items to Council's attention. There was one adverse water quality incident that occurred in 2024 related to a distribution sample. This was reported as required with verification sampling completed, which confirmed the issue is likely the result of a sample collection or site conditions, as opposed to actually an issue with the quality of the water. There was no further action required with that incident. There was one non-compliance that occurred in 2024 that was related to a contractor using a different disinfectant product when commissioning pipe. Again, this was reported to the as required, and the operating authority worked with the ministry as required on that incident. And then there was two non-compliances which were identified as part of the ministry's most recent inspection of the water system that occurred in 2024, and those can be identified further in report PW 19-2025, which is next on the agenda tonight. And then just to speak to the question Councillor Craigmile was alluding to regarding the sodium samples. So the report will reference 2024 data. Sodium is a little bit different. It's only required to be sampled every 5 years or every 60 months. The last, through the completion of 2024, the last time those samples were collected were 2020, and they were due to be recollected in 2025, which they were in January of this year. So that's the reason for the dates on those. Otherwise, the system, again, performed well in 2024, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions with regards to the water system report? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put the motion on the floor that report PW 18-2025 annual water system report be received, and the council acknowledges receipt of the 2024 annual water system report for the town of St. Mary's water treatment and distribution systems. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next up, the drinking water system inspection, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is presented to Council to advise of the completion of the recent inspection of the drinking water system by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. These inspections are routine in nature and ensure that the town's water system is operating within approved processes, protocols, and regulations. This year's inspection was carried out on October 23rd, 2024, and covered the period from October 22nd, 2023 through to December 5th, 2024. As a result of the inspection, the ministry identified two non-compliance items, which were that all parts of the drinking water system were not disinfected in accordance with the procedure listed in Schedule B of the Drinking Water Works Permit. As touched on briefly in the last report, this was related to a third-party contractor inadvertently using an alternative disinfectant product, which was corrected at the time of the event and reported to the applicable agencies for corrective action measures as necessary. The second non-compliance item was secondary disinfectant residual was not tested as required for a large municipal residential drinking water system. In this instance, field verification was missed on a Friday. Operators realized it and then completed the field verification on Monday, but fell outside of the regulatory timeframe. As noted within the ministry inspection report, compliance for both of these items will be reviewed during the ministry's next inspection of the St. Mary's system. Both of the non-compliance items carried a non-compliance risk rating for the inspection that resulted in an overall inspection score of 92.46% this year. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Luna.
Thank you, Richard. Dave, just to go back to the sodium issue, I see on page, well, it's 232 of our report, that the levels of sodium are reported to the medical officer of health when they exceed 20 milligrams per liter. I'm not understanding these numbers. It seems that we are above 20 milligrams per liter all the time. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Luna. So yes, you are correct. We are above the 20 milligrams per liter. That sodium level usually always hovers around the 40 to 50 milligrams per liter. And that's just the nature of the bedrock, the limestone bedrock that we use and draw our water from for the aquifer. They are reported to the Ministry of Environment as well as the local health unit. And that's done directly as part of the water system reporting protocols. So that happens automatically. And that's done so that they are able to identify and inform their patients or their doctors throughout the region for them to inform their patients that might be impacted by higher sodium content in our water, those that are on sodium restricted diets or have severe hypertension. And then on top of that, we also post our results onto our website as well for the general public to be aware as well.
So other than notifying the medical officer of health and the website, do we put a notice in the paper or anything? Because some people don't go to their doctor but once a year, or may not be aware of it. And if they're on a sodium restricted diet, that could be serious for them, correct? Or is it just assumed that we're always above the acceptable levels? And
yeah, like we've always been above the acceptable levels. I know years and years ago there was a big concern about sodium in the water. The levels have always been where they are. It's just the nature of the aquifer that we draw from, unfortunately, which is true for almost all groundwater sources in the region. We haven't been advertising the results when they're updated. We do post them to the website, and then we also post the annual drinking water inspection report to the website that has all of our analytical data for our water system as well. We do get calls from time to time about the water quality, and kind of that's our go-to point for directing customers and residents to where they can get that information from us. If it's the will of council to post that and have it advertised in a different means, and that's something that we can look at as well. But historically, we have not been doing that, no.
I'm just wondering, because not to be discriminatory in any way, but most people who are on a sodium restricted diet with hypertension are advanced in ages, I guess I could put that delicately, and may not go to the website, and again, may not see their doctor but once a year or so. So I don't know if it's serious enough if there's been any issues that you're aware of that we should advertise it or make it more public notice, or I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's not one of the water quality criteria that comes up most for us. It is sampled infrequently, so every 60 months, so there is a big time period. And the reason that is because the results always come back above the reporting limits. Basically the ministry decided years ago that instead of having everyone sample every year and always reporting every year, the results are in excess of the limits, and nothing's really changed. They scaled it back to 60 months. So that's kind of why the time frame between sample results. Again, it's not something that we take a lot of phone calls for. So whether or not the information is navigating through the applicable channels through the health unit and through the network of healthcare practitioners, I don't know. And if we want to post or do something different, we certainly can. We also have a full sodium information package on the website as well, that speaks to different consumptions and where sodium comes from and what it can do and all that stuff as well. So that all stemmed from historical conversations on sodium, and that's kind of the information and the means that has been in place for quite a while within the town.
Okay. Anything further on the drinking water report? Councillor Alward.
Thanks, Your Worship. Hey, Dave, I apologize if I've missed it in here somewhere, but I see our score is 92.46%. Is there like a minimum score you can get, or is it more or less just arbitrary and we will fix all these things regardless?
Through your worship to Councillor Alward, that's a great question. I like to think the minimum score we would get is 100%, and be perfect every year. Unfortunately, certain stuff always comes up. If the level gets too low, the issue becomes you invite the ministry into your system. So once levels get below a certain threshold, which if memory serves is around the 80%, then you start having the ministry take a special interest in what you're doing. And nobody wants that, and
Sure.
we always strive for that 100%.
Now, traditionally, does anybody get that 100%, or is it pretty uncommon?
It's not uncommon. We have had 100% in the system before, and it'll kind of go from 100% to something a little less, and we've been hovering anywhere between the low 90s to 100% for years and years now. So it's definitely not uncommon. It does happen, yeah, we always strive for it, and sometimes you wonder with like really big centers and municipal systems how they get 100%, where there's not one thing that happens on that, but you even see 100% on those large systems as well. So definitely does happen.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Worship. So the way I read it, and I could have been very wrong, so I'm not even going to tell you what I thought, but I'd like to hear from you, Dave. The couple incidents that did happen, I would put them as directors of the water quality. I would think they were probably, I can see how it happens, but I would think that they might have been insignificant, or, I don't think they were going to lead to any catastrophic, outcome or something. Am I reading this correctly? I mean, what's your stance?
Through your worship to Councillor Craigmile, so I want to be careful with how I phrase this. So our stance is we try and do everything according to provincial regulations. So when the instances were identified, they were non-compliant or so forth. So we take the preventative steps to deal with it, whether or not it's deemed significant or not. We always take the necessary steps to comply with the regulations and the reporting requirements to the Ministry of Environment and or the local health unit as well. So all non-compliances are significant in our mind, and we treat them all equally as significant.
You're not helping me out here, Dave, of whether or not I should be concerned, or what my concern level should be. I'm looking at it from the point of view as I don't think there was any risk to public health. I think notice something was different. It was outside of what should have been done, but corrective action was taken as soon as possible, and there was, what I'm saying? So I realize that it's nice to be 100%, but things will happen. There's a lot of third parties involved and other people doing things, and it's easy to happen.
Yeah, and we like, I know the operating authority took immediate action when the issue was identified, and actually took additional steps to safeguard the drinking water system, which included system flushing and sampling, which was just extra due diligence on top of what was being called for, just to make sure that risk level was managed to the minimum extent possible, or to the maximum extent possible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All right, so the suggested motion is that PW 19-2025 Drinking Water System Inspection Report be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham, seconded. Councillor Alward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to 8.1.5 with regards to requests for water bill reduction. Mr. Blake, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is presented to Council as information related to the two correspondence received on the agenda tonight related to high water bills and requests for bill reduction consideration. To help with Council's consideration, staff looked to provide sufficient information within the report to guide a decision for Council, but I will walk through that information with Council this evening. The town does not have a formal water bill forgiveness program or leakage allowance policy that would enable staff to administer a bill reduction on prescribed checks and balances. Some municipalities do have some version of various reduction or assistance programs. Others do not, and it's a bit different for each municipality and can vary based on specific circumstances such as the billing frequency, consumption used, et cetera, et cetera. Municipal Bylaw 46 of 2014 provides the guidance requirements for meter reading, billing frequency, estimated readings, and water bill adjustments. Specifically, water bill adjustments are currently only permitted to be administered by staff if the validity of the meter is under dispute and found to be outside of normal operating conditions. In both of the instances noted in the correspondence, the functionality of the meter is not being questioned. Known leaks were found on the private plumbing systems and eventually repaired or isolated by the property owners. As such, the volume of water that was billed in each instance passed through the water meters, and available provisions within the bylaw for billing adjustments are not applicable. As there were no other avenues available at a staff level, Council received the correspondence on the agenda this evening from the residents. To assist Council in their consideration, while these requests do occur periodically, they are infrequent. So within the report, staff looked back at previous requests as that precedent-setting consideration. The previous request was from 2023, it was the last time we had a request of this nature come to Council, and looked to seek relief from a portion of the billing as a result of the leak to a private plumbing system. The decision made at that time was that customers have a responsibility to inspect, maintain, and repair private plumbing systems that are outside the control of the town, and water through the meter was water billed and no reductions were given at that time. Now, that being said, times change, situations change, and different factors may need to be considered in certain scenarios. So as such, with these two correspondents, staff looked to provide applicable information within the report to help Council navigate the requests received and inform in their decision. For the correspondence related to 31 Pelletier Street, this request is slightly different from the other requests received in that no extenuating circumstances were noted related to the high billings or that contributed to prolonging the leak. For this request, as previously noted, the meter function was not in question. A known leak was found on private property. The water billed is understood to have went through the meter as a result of the leak, and bill forgiveness is being requested, but no specifics were provided other than seeking forgiveness for a leaking tap. In this instance, there are no policies or programs in place that would forgive water usage, and previous decisions of Council indicate that private property owners are responsible for water usage and the care and control of their private plumbing systems. So as such, for Council's consideration, staff recommended that this request be denied. For correspondence related to 446 Witter Street East, this request is slightly different and does have some nuances to it. Again, the meter function is not in question. A known leak was found on private property. The water billed is understood to have went through the meter as a result of the leak. However, the property owner suggests that a bill reduction is warranted based on circumstances related to the account billings that may have impacted their ability to identify the leak sooner. To summarize water usage for council related to this request, on page 314 of the agenda is a table of historical consumption that helps to illustrate the billing cycles and consumption history for this account, and also provides a timeline of events. With this one in particular, the October 13th read ended up being missed by our reading contractor or reading subcontractor. So what that means is it gets flagged for a reread, and they have 7 days to come back and do a reread on the system to get that read before bills have to be issued. They were unable to collect that return read in the time period provided, so that monthly invoice ended up being estimated. So what happens in accordance with our bylaw and our approved policies, estimated reading within the community is done at 13 cubic meters per month. The next bill cycle, which would have been read on November 7th, it was originally flagged as an estimated read, and that was the information that was communicated to Mr. Cubberly when they inquired about their billing history when they were investigating their high water usage. When the correspondence came in to the town, and as part of the town's due diligence to provide the supporting information to council, we actually questioned Festival Hydro on that November 7th reading, which through their review, they were able to confirm it was in fact an actual read and not an estimated read that was originally communicated. While this doesn't remove the fact that the billing cycle was estimated for that time period, it does provide clarification on the account where one can reasonably identify the leak likely started in October, as noted in the correspondence that we received, with actual reads confirming worsening conditions in November and December. For timeline of events, I know council has a kind of a summary sheet of timeline of events there. To complicate this situation a little more, during all this time, once we got clarification on that actual read for November 7th, there is a time period that between the reads to when the bills are actually issued, which is usually about 10 to 15 days. Right in the middle of all that, Canada Post decided to go on strike for 5 or 6 weeks. So with all that, that just compounds into the consideration here for the request. Festival Hydro, who is our billing contractor, did take preventative steps to help to get information about new bills out to customers that might have been impacted by disruptions to the mail service. So number 7 on the timeline of events, we were able to get information out of Festival Hydro that there was a call made November 26th, 2024 to advise that a new bill had been generated and was ready for review, and that residents were able to call in or go online to see what that balance was going to be so that they could stay on top of billings. With that, the next read in December, an actual read occurred on December 11th, again showing an increasing trend in consumption. And at this point in time, it triggered the notification protocols within Festival Hydro. So anything 40 cubic meters above normal consumption automatically triggers a flag on the account where a notice will be issued. So that letter of high usage was issued on December 17th. And then again, the account was read with an actual read on January 10th with significant usage. And the billing contractor, Festival Hydro, actually called the resident at that point to get a verification read because it was really out of whack with what they would typically see. They were able to verify that, and then a notice was issued for high water usage on January 24th as well, just to follow up on that that system. So those are kind of a timeline of events for this particular one, where there was disruption, or not disruption, but there was an estimated read that occurred within the period of the leak, and then the postage strike occurred in that time frame as well. So there's no real way to know whether or not at what point in time bills were being received by the resident, or whether there was any delays in receiving the high water notice letter as well. That would need to be considered as part of this request. Within the report, staff posed a series of questions to council when considering the request. In these instances, established protocols, practices, and policies for water bill reductions are not applicable, as the leaks were found at both locations and the water bill would have passed through the meter. The meter readings and billing processes were found to be in accordance with established practices and protocols as per bylaw 46 of 2014. And previous decisions for similar requests have applied water through the meter as water billed, and reductions have not been granted in past, as property owners have a reasonable responsibility to control usage, inspection, maintenance, and repair of the private plumbing systems. Specifically in the case of 446 Witter Street East, one could argue that there are extenuating circumstances related to the estimated read that occurred, as well as the postal strike, that could have impacted the timeframe to identify the leak. However, council would need to consider the extent to which the town has a responsibility or obligation to ensure residents are aware of their consumption, usage, and history, and leak potential on private plumbing systems. The billing contractor did follow established and approved billing procedures for the account, and efforts were made by the billing contractor to navigate billing and notification challenges during the postal strike for the resident. And then the last piece I was going to mention is that with all high water usage bills that go out in town, a payment plan is offered by our billing contractor and is available to residents to pay back the determined amounts through a payment process or a payment replan cycle that spreads it out over a number of months as well. With that, I'll turn it back to council and take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Pridham.
Thank you, Your Worship. The November 26th reading, call, was just a call for to notice that the bill was ready, and it wasn't a call to trigger that 40 gallon or per meter, whatever it is, notice, because it was at 42, I think, that month. Did they mention that on the phone?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Pridham. So my understanding is that just November 26th call was a courtesy call letting people know that they had a new bill that was ready for payment. So that was the information that was provided to the town, was that the call provided information saying that they could call into customer service to determine what their bill value was. Or they could log in online through the online portal and retrieve their bill that way. There was not a notice on that one for high water consumption. And the reason for that was the November 7th read was originally flagged as an estimate. And their system will not generate an automatic flag on an estimated read. So that also, whether or not the 42 was unlikely to trigger their threshold for a flag anyways, because it wasn't 40 cubic meters over what their normal consumption would be. It wasn't going to trigger it because it was originally flagged as that estimate, which we found out through Festival Hydro is a manual toggle process in their system. So because it was an estimate the month prior, it has to manually be toggled back over to an actual, which when they reviewed it wasn't done and just seemed to be a manual oversight on their end.
Thank you. I guess knowing that it wasn't to the level to be triggered is kind of important, so it wouldn't have been triggered anyway. Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Can I just ask a question for clarification? So if I understand it correctly, 40 cubic meters over triggers an alarm, but the client went from 5 cubic meters a month average to 42, which is more than 8 times their normal usage, and you're telling me that wouldn't trigger a notice? It just strikes me that 8 times normal usage is unusual. You know, you see where I'm going with this, because And also, this is the first time I've noticed there was a question of whether it was red or not red, which I guess I didn't understand before. But I guess I just don't understand that, like, why 40's picked as that line, because to me, 8 times, I mean, I had the kids at home too, we run showers and all, went through that, you know, I was the bad water dad. But the reality is 8 times seems unusual.
Yeah, and through your worship, so that's a set value that the billing contractor has in their system, and they do billing for not only us, but the city of Stratford as well. So that's just a metric that they have. It's not a prescribed metric that we are dictating that they use, and it's unfortunately I don't have a better answer as other than that it's just the way they've set their system up to auto flag on all their accounts that need that second cursory set of eyes or review.
And I get that, but I mean, it was just like, it was 8, not only is it 8 times more, we're 3 cubic meters short of triggering the alarm. It just the metrics and the numbers, if the math was different, if they were a higher user coming out of the gate or a lower user coming out of the gate, you know, so you're telling me you could use potentially 10, 15 times more water than you normally do and not get an alarm. That I just find that odd, that the number is pinned to a gross amount as opposed to a metric. You see where I'm going?
I do, yes. Yes.
You know, because especially in a town where we have a lot of people, I'm just trying to prevent us running into this again. We have a lot of single households, and so, you know, I'm just doing the math in my head quickly because I know a little bit about water consumption, is that we could have someone that gets a water bill that's 15 to 20 times higher over 2 months who's away and has, or whatever, or their daughter's paying the bills or whatever, and it not become noticed in terms of the numbers. I'm just surprised the metric isn't based on a volume calculation that way. It just seems really odd. 40 cubic meters, while it isn't a lot, it is a substantial amount if you're in a single person household. So, and in terms of, I'm trying to do the math quickly in my head and I'm having trouble with it because there's different levels of water usage that does it, but it would be a substantial number. Like a cubic meter is 216 gallons, something like that, I think, isn't it? Anyway, I'm having trouble with the math here tonight. I'm drawing a blank. But I guess my point being is I just don't understand why it's 40 cubic meters, because we could easily get into a situation of water volume being 10 or 15 or 20 times higher and not triggering this situation, which I find really odd. And I just thought of this tonight when I'm looking at this, because I'm doing the numbers here in the math and I'm thinking, wow, you know, this guy had 8 times his usage and it never triggered the alarm. To me, that's a problem. Anyway, Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Worship. So Dave, if the leak was found, can you help me out here a little bit with what was the leak? If it used up all this water for that period of time, if it was outside, was it outside?
Through your worship to Councillor Craigmile. So yes, so our understanding for the leak on Witter Street there is that it was an outside leak past the water meter. So it'll be a private plumbing system that's going somewhere outside on the property and was leaking to the ground. And that's why normally you would get leakage into a basement or a crawl space and you would either hear it or see it or some variation, but this time with this instance was leaking outside in a different area of the property.
Okay, thank you for that response. So if I can just carry on here a little bit now that I have that known. There's a number of houses, I believe, you can tell me how many in the town of St. Mary's, that we already have as listed as issues if the frost goes too deep, and then they're called and they're told to run their water. And in that case, when they run their water, that's metered. Do we charge them for all that water?
Through your worship to Councillor Craigmile, so you are correct. We do have what we call a frozen service list, so properties that are prone to freezing in the winter months. When conditions get to a certain point, we will issue notice to run water, and we take a meter reading at the time that the notice goes out. They will run their water for a period of time until the threat of freezing subsides, and then they will get a supplemental notice to stop running their water, and we will also read the meter again at that point so that it will reset the account for them. As you may recall, new for 2025, we actually had a new inclusion on the fee bylaw for let water run. So there are predefined or predetermined usage groupings or buckets where people on that distribution list for running water would fall into and then are billed accordingly. So it's predefined through the fee bylaw. Their bills are adjusted to account for that trickle of water that they run during that time, but it's all done according to their consumption, their bucket that they fall in on the fee bylaw, and that done through that process.
Okay, so thank you. So in certain instances, it's not precedent setting. There are things that are above and beyond the control. And I guess my concern when I'm going through all this is that, yes, I agree. There was a number of circumstances here, including the postal strike, that happened. But however, I am concerned that it doesn't happen all that often, but it did happen in this case. And it's on somebody that has a good knowledge of plumbing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for the average person, they would have had no idea. This is real important, how we look after our townspeople. So if what I've seen since I've been on council is somebody's toilet leaked or this happened, it's 1 month that was up a little bit and we deny it. But this is a case where it's large volumes of water, and I'm going to take full support. I'm going to back the homeowner in this case. That there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, but the meter wasn't read, and in those cases, I really believe that we have to somehow look after our residents in that case, because we already do it with your water might freeze, so we're going to tell you to run water all night long. So so I don't think it's precedent setting. I think it's on an individual case. That's where I'm going to leave it at. But I'm going to support the homeowner on that instance.
Councillor Edney?
Thank you, Worship. I felt similarly to Councillor Craigmile, although I'd offer a recalibration of what the homeowner has offered. Not trying to get out of the bill, but they offer to pay 1/3. I think 1/3 represents, that they recognize that they might have at some point been able to mitigate this had they been more aware. But 1/3 is 1/3 of the time period as well. And I feel that the 2 months that they would have been using water, we would charge whatever the water rate would be for those 2 months, on top of the 471. I just think that makes it a little more fair all the way around.
Have you calculated an amount for that? Or
I have not.
Okay. Okay.
But I am looking at the 5 meters squared as kind of the,
Okay.
or cubed, sorry.
Councillor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. The word I have written down here is anomaly, and given the fact I don't know that we can fully say as our billing agency that we weren't at fault, because the 1 meter read was noted as an estimate. So again, if I'm the homeowner looking at my bill and I see it's an estimate that's at 42 meters and I normally use 5, it's like, okay, well, it's an estimate, so I don't know what's going on with the system, but it's not my water system. So that's the first thing that strikes me. Again, you have the postal strike going through there, so when this resident actually found out, I'm still not sure when they realized their water usage was high based on this chart I'm looking at. So I think we do take some ownership on that. The other thing I would bring up is that knowing that it's a leak that's outside, again, that's a bit of an anomaly that it's not in the house, but that it is outside. That tells me that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but would their bill be issued for wastewater and clean water? So would they be paying for water treatment on water that was distributed into the ground, or was this strictly just for water usage?
Through your worship to Councillor Lucas. So this one is, just to add to the intrigue on this one, property not connected to the sanitary sewer system. So the billed amount is water only, and is on a private septic system.
I had a discussion about a similar scenario this week, and they said they got an email. Do you have to sign up for email notifications, Dave, or how does that work? They said they got an email notice about their break.
To be honest, I'd have to look into that. I've never got an email notice for anything, and could just be the way my account has been set up. I know they're trying to modernize and get email addresses on file. I'm a late adopter, so it would definitely be something I'd have to look into for sure.
I think that's something we should share with the public, because she told me how the whole thing started. She got an email, which I'd never heard of. I didn't know we had that available. Mr. Kelly?
No,
Yeah.
through your worship, yeah, I can verify that. I get an email every time I fill the pool up in the spring. They call me, they email and say there's a high water use or whatever next time the meter guy comes.
Okay, so is that something you have to sign up for? Or?
Yeah, I signed up to the
Paperless
Festival
billing.
Hydro portal.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. I think anybody who's switched over to paperless billing. So we were all, as customers, given the option to switch over to paperless billing. So as soon as you do that, you start getting everything emailed to you.
Okay.
So and that's happened the last 3 years, because I've been on paperless billing myself for about 2 years.
So anyone on paperless billing would get a notification that way? Okay, because I wasn't even aware of that service. She asked me about it, and I said, I don't know. Yeah, okay. Further comments or questions? Councilor Luna.
Thank you, Worship. I'm kind of on the fence about this. I don't know which way I'm going to vote on this, but I'm just wondering if the bylaw from 2014 needs to be re-looked at and reworded to take in these kind of scenarios, or because it's pretty cut and dry. What I'm understanding you to say, Dave, about the bylaw is that as long as it's not a water meter misfunction, then it's not our problem. So, you know, to put it bluntly, but should we relook at that bylaw and make exceptions within the bylaw?
Through your worship to Councillor Luna, so one of the things that's on the recommendation this evening is actually to develop and bring back a policy for council's consideration on how we deal with these requests moving forward. They do occur not overly frequently, but we do get enough of them to where we're at a point where a policy would be beneficial to not only staff, but also the residents and council as well, to kind of provide a best course forward or an avenue available to everybody that's clearly defined for managing these scenarios into the future.
You mentioned a payment plan by a provider. Is that an interest-free payment plan, or how does that work? Or do we need to do something? So say we decided to, say, deny both these requests, and would they be eligible automatically for a payment plan, or does council have to set something up? How does that work?
Through your worship, so it's not an automatic payment plan that comes up. Ironically, on another matter this week, I got a little more insight into this. So the way it works is they need to get their most recent bill, or the bill that has the high water usage or value on it, and then they would call into Festival Hydro to request options available to facilitate the payment. And at that point, the payment plan would be discussed, and it'll vary depending on the individual needs, whether it's going to be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, so on and so forth. And to my understanding is they are interest-free, and that's something that we would clarify as well with our contacts at Festival Hydro as well.
So they're the determinant of how long it is, in other words. So I could phone up and say, I want to pay it over 6 months, and they could say, no, you got to pay it over 3, and we're not 100% sure if it's interest-free.
So it's my understanding is they will work with the resident or the customer to find kind of that ground that works for everybody, and what level or what payment can be accommodated monthly or managed monthly. So there's some flexibility there that's not stringent, where we will only offer up to 3 months. They will work with the customers based on everyone's individual needs to kind of come up with a repayment schedule that'll work for everybody.
Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. And Dave, just to the mayor's point about the threshold limit thing, we don't have any control over that, correct? That's through the billing organization, right? We don't have any say in what that threshold trigger is.
Through your worship to Councillor Luna, so it is set currently by our billing contractor, Festival Hydro. That's not to say we wouldn't have any say to adjust how those flags are generated on Town of St. Mary's accounts. It's definitely something we can pose where if it's council's desire to put in or look at different metrics where we can tie it to a percentage or a lower value so that some of these or so that properties that are generally using less water might get that notice sooner than they otherwise would. They've been really good with working with us to adjust different things and protocols and billing metrics that we've used. And I mentioned it previously, the Let Water Run notices, they worked extensively with us to come up with a system that would work for not only their billing system, but also what we were comfortable with as well. So that's something that we can definitely reach out and see what options are available to improve that up or tighten that up for our residents.
Yeah, I guess just not to belabor this point, but my concern is that if it was a slow leak and went on for a long time, we have a situation here where it was 8 times normal, more than 8 times normal use and didn't trigger the alarm, right? So if the usage had continued to be 42 meters cubic per month and the resident wasn't watching the bill or sick or in a nursing home or whatever, it could have gone on for a long, long time, right? It wouldn't trigger the alarm because it went from 5 to 42, which isn't 40 plus, but it's 8 times the usage. That's my concern.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to jump in, is because I appreciate what Dave's last point was, but I don't want to leave council with the impression that we have the ability to change this, right? Like, you got to think back that these are software systems that are coded. It may only be able to do, like, the coding of the software may be such that it can only take a hard number and not do it 8 times, right? So it would have to be fairly highly sophisticated to do that math of average bill, less current usage, and do a percentage, right? And when you start thinking in your mind, because I started doing the rough math in my mind, 40 was probably very purposely set. When you start thinking about that, the average household, when we do sewage design, we assume a household uses a cubic meter a day of water. That's super high in this current day and age. My household with 6 people, we use about 0.5. When you think of 40 additional cubic meters over a billing cycle of like 62 days, that's an extra like 0.6 cubic meters a day. I bet you it's set because they're saying it's set at a threshold, but it's closely equivalent to doubling your usage. They're doubling the average household usage, and that's where I think you're, by going to a percentage or like this times as the threshold, I think you're probably asking the software to be far more sophisticated than it probably can be. It probably has to be hard-coded at a number, and the number that they're using would roughly equate to the average user that we use generally in the industry doubling their usage over the billing period, which in my mind makes a lot of sense.
I get the number, but respectfully, I just don't want to run into another one where there's 6 months of usage that doesn't trigger it. And under this scenario, that could happen.
And it could, because if you're an exceptionally low user, you may never get triggered because you just may never get there. Like, you can slice and dice numbers wherever you want. You can say they could go 50 times more, but if they only use a cubic meter in a billing period, like you're kind of working on the fringes, and this kind of system, you're always trying to work more in the middle. So like, I think it's safe to say Dave can follow up and ask them like why 40 is set, what the capability of their system is to generate flags. Mm-hmm. But I don't want anybody to be left with the impression that we're going to be able to get it so sensitive that we can flag these all the time.
No, I understand that. I just don't want to be put in a situation where we run into the same problem and it goes on for a long time, because under this scenario, it could be a substantial money for a long time that doesn't get detected. Respectfully, like, you know, they went from, the threshold is a hard number, they went just under the number, and if it had been a slow leak, it could be 6 months or a year before anyone picks up on it.
It could,
yeah.
But
that's a problem. I don't want to be sitting here at the table and not address that.
But on the flip side, how much is the town's responsibility to identify a leak on private property, right? So if I have a slow leak in my house and I hear my toilet slowly running, as a homeowner, I do have an obligation to make sure I pay attention to that. And if again, if I'm that super low water user who now has a slow leak in his toilet and the Festival Hydro doesn't pick it up, is that Festival Hydro's fault and the town's fault, or is it my fault for not detecting it? I don't think it's the town's fault in that case. Like I think we can do as best we can within the capabilities of the billing software, but there's no scenario where we can pick up every single person.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting there could be a flaw in their system. Eight times is extreme in my opinion, and I just want staff to follow up on that. Okay. Further questions from council? Councilor Pridham.
Thank you. There was a notice given December 17th, and then another one given on January 24th, which is a little over a month of awareness. And the bill for the last bill was 849 cubic meters. So I'm uncomfortable with the ask of they're only paying 1/3. I think that if we were to consider it, it would be kind of the opposite, because that extreme use, they were given notice, and the smaller uses that were recorded, and one of them was an actual reading, and it was at 73 meters. So, you know, I think our obligation to correct that is I think they're asking just a little too much.
Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. I also have a concern with both of these requests being in the same motion, because I may agree with the one option and not agree with the other. So can we split them?
100%, we're open to everything. That's the whole idea. Yeah, we're not to that stage yet, but we'll go. But you know, I'll entertain any motion. I mean, we still have to. You're right. They are two different issues, so perhaps they should be dealt with separately, because they are two different issues. Further questions, comments? Councillor Craigmile.
From what I'm seeing here, there was a leak, but it's not a small leaking toilet. And then with time, it just snapped apart, and that's where you got the great big one at the end. So I think if the notice would have been a little earlier and they figured it out, that final one may not have happened, I guess is where I'm going. So I still think when you look at the average monthly use of 5 meters cubed and what the actual willing to pay, I mean, it's well above what their normal would have been. So I'm still going to support the homeowner.
Okay, further questions, comments? Councillor Pridham.
Yes, thank you. I'm comfortable paying 1/3 and not the full ask. So paying the portion that they were willing to pay, I think that would be what we would pay. Just because the timeline, the actual notice was given on December 17th, and then again on January 24th, they received the bill of 842 on the 10th. And the previous meter, which was, I guess, no, the December 11th, which was an actual reading, was at 73 meters. So that notice that it was high came in at 73 meters, and then the inability to correct it within that 1 month time frame accumulated to 849 meters. It was that 1 month that the bill went high, super high. They were high, but super high. So that's where I think that's their obligation.
Can you just clarify the numbers? I'm sorry, I didn't follow what you meant in terms of who pays what, just the number. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
So
you said we, I don't know who you meant we was, that's all.
oh, the town of St. Mary's pay 1/3, so the 471, and that the onus be on the owner of the property to pay the remaining portion.
Thank you for the clarification. I didn't follow that. I apologize. But
Yeah.
Councillor Lucas?
Thank you, through Mayor. Just to come back to, I'm with Councillor Craigmile on this one. I'm going to support the homeowner. The reading on November 7th was flagged as an estimate. So even if that reading was over the 40 threshold, there would have been no notification, is my understanding. So to me, that's a billing flaw. Somebody dropped the ball there. It was flagged as an estimate when it was an actual. So that's a ball drop there. The notice was issued December 17th. We were still in a postal strike at that point. So to say it was issued December 17th, a week before Christmas at the end of a postal strike, again, it's a series of unfortunate events. And in my opinion, you know, we need to, I feel we need to support the resident in this.
Okay, so there was a suggestion, Councilor Luna, did you want to move a motion to split up the two issues that we talked to? You want to put something on the floor? Do you mind just move something just to, because I think there's two different issues here.
Well, I would move that the two letters of concern be divided into two separate motions and dealt with separately.
Okay.
Is that-
Well, you want to specifically deal with one and then we'll deal with the other? You want to move, is there something you want to move to start with?
Well,
You want to talk about the Plessy one first, or?
well, we could deal with that and get that out of the way, I guess, yeah. Okay, so you want me to read the whole thing? Recommended that PW 2025 water bill reduction request be received and that council deny the request regarding a water bill adjustment for 31 Plessier Street, and that staff report back to council with a draft water bill dispute policy for consideration.
Okay, okay. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Craigmile. Moved by Councillor Luna, second by Councillor Craigmile. With regards, we're splitting up and we'll deal with the Witter Street one as a separate motion. Thank you for that. Discussion with regards to the Plessy Street bill. Councillor Edney.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I just would like to point out to the resident that there is an urgent needs fund that is administered through Stratford Social Services, and this would fall under that. And it's open to everyone. It's not necessarily just low income. It is open to everyone, and I think you just simply call Stratford Social Services and apply, and you can receive up to $200. And this would be one of those reasons why you might call. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question then on the motion put forth by Councillor Luna and second by Councillor Craigmile that report PW 2025 water bill reduction request be received and the council deny the request regarding a water bill adjustment for 31 Plessy Street and the staff report back to council with a draft water bill dispute policy for consideration. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion then at this time for the other one. We can have a discussion. Does anyone want to put anything on the floor with regards to the water bill for 446 Witter Street? Or do we have more questions for staff? Council, I'm looking for a hand. Sorry, Councilor Luna.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to agree with option 2, the bill to be reduced, but I agree with Councillor Pridham that it should be reversed. The homeowner should be responsible for 2/3 and the town 1/3. But that option isn't presented to us, so.
I mean, I'm open to putting anything on the floor. We can word any motion how you want if someone wants to put something on the floor. Councillor Craigmile?
Yeah, I'd like to put the
Can
motion.
you, please?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'd like to put the motion on the floor that that council endorse the dollar value listed in Mr. Cubberley's letter regarding the water bill for 446 Witter Street East as detailed in the report PW 2020.
Mayor Strathley, if I may just ask, was there a motion put on the floor by Councillor Luna to go with an endorsed option? I just don't, I wasn't sure if she had moved that and if there is a motion on the floor.
No, there wasn't a motion on the floor. She had that option, and Councillor Craigmile put a motion on the floor. I'm going to need some help with the wording, Councillor Craigmile. I didn't catch it quick enough, actually. I'm sorry.
Option 2, was it option 2? Sure. Okay, that council endorsed option 2 regarding the water bill for 446 Witter Street East as detailed within the report PW 2025 and the staff report back to council with the draft water bill dispute policy.
again, that's too quick for me. Option 2, council endorse option 2, is that good enough? Okay, yep. Just option 2? Okay, fair enough. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councilor Lucas. Discussion. Councilor Alward.
It's taken me a while to decide where exactly I come down on this, because really this whole thing kind of scales with how unlucky you get, you know, and I think that the circumstances created in this timeline of events do sort of fall out of being unlucky, and as Councilor Lucas said, this is an anomaly. So at a case-by-case basis, I don't think that this sets a precedent, so I am comfortable moving the motion as Councilor Craigmile has said it, so.
Okay, anything further? Seeing nothing further, then I'll call the question that council endorse option 2 regarding the water bill for 446 Witter Street East as detailed within report PW 2025 and the staff report back to council with a draft water bill dispute policy for consideration. Moved by Councilor Craigmile, seconded by Councilor Lucas. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. I don't think so. It's Kathy Barrett, I think. Okay, moving on then to community services. Do you want to take 5 minutes, everyone, or is everyone okay? Everyone good? Okay, we'll carry on then. Community services, Mrs. Shi, please.
Good evening. Okay, a few updates for our monthly report that I want to highlight. So I'm not going to touch on the Aquatic Center because we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So from March break, sorry, my goodness, programming, we had a lot of programming throughout the month of March for many of our services that we offer. The St. Mary's Heritage Fair took place, very successful. So we've had, I'm not going to go through all of the programming because we have quite a bit of programming within the report itself. There are a couple of fundraisers that are coming up in the Senior Services Department that are happening in April, primarily around Scrapathon. The Easter lunch will also be happening coming up in April. In the report this month, we also did highlight one of our groups. So the Early On program has now been operational with us for a few years. And we just wanted to highlight the relationships that are formed and the groups that are starting to find places where mothers and families can gather and discuss similar situations, being connected. So we just wanted to highlight that. They sent us this picture in, so they said that we could share it with council, so I just wanted to share that. Some of our statistics, all of the statistics are pretty similar. Month over month, there's an increase with our annual youth center memberships. So we have seen youth center and youth programming grow, and that continues to be consistent over the last year. So I think we're going to continue to see those numbers grow. Same with childcare numbers, they continue to grow, but I know we've had many discussions about that at council as well. And then finally, the Pyramid Recreation Center usage is up. In some areas are pretty consistent compared to the previous year at this time, and the same with senior services. So we're still having more of an uptake on meals, that food insecurity piece, or individuals that are in their homes getting food. So we're still working through that with a number of our clients. Are there any questions specifically?
Questions with regards to the report? Councilor Alward.
Thanks, Your Worship. All right, Steph, I'm going to take a crack at this, and this is one of the weirdest questions I'm going to ask. So at Girl Guides the other night, which I happened to make an appearance at, one of the girls asked me about the youth center, And when I listed some of the things we offer at the youth center and casually mentioned the video games. And she goes, and so this little girl looks at me and she goes, well, do you guys have all of the video games? And I was like, well, no. And she's like, well, why not? And I realized in that moment I couldn't necessarily answer that question. But, I mean, fiscally, sure. But I guess my question was, do we have to stick to fully licensed gaming products? Or are we allowed to kind of get a little bootleg with it and use emulation processes and kind of just throw whatever we got at the wall? How does that work?
That is a great, unique question. So we currently purchase licensed games. We've also rented them from the library as well. We've not done any bootleg games or downloading or any of that kind of stuff at this point, and I think we'd stay away from that. However, what I would suggest, if somebody does have a request, so this individual that you were speaking to, if there's things that they want to see that we don't have, they should tell us. I know Joanne and her team often asks the youth what kinds of things they'd like to see. So if it's, like a dance one versus a,
Sure.
I'm trying to think of some of the other games that we have there, but we don't have the violent games either. So on the same hand, it's kind of that combination. I mean, Roadblocks is still extraordinarily popular. The kids continue to play that I don't think will ever go away. But yeah, I would tell them to let us know what games they'd like. There might be some other ways of getting some games, but I think we pretty much stick to the purchasing and then getting from the library.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Okay, so the suggested motion of DCS 18-2025 monthly report, community services, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham, seconded. Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to the natatorium, additional updates with regards to contingency for the pool. Is Doug going to give this report, Stephanie, or are you handling this report?
Yes, Doug is here this
There he
evening
is,
as well.
okay.
I am, yes. And then we're just waiting for, I believe, Matt White is coming in as well, and I see him now, so we can go ahead with this report. This is to provide council with an update on the aquatics work that has been done to date as part of the large renovation, as well as a request to increase the contingency budget based on some of the reports that have come back and some of the work that we know needs to be done that was above what we had hoped would be in the original scope. And also just to do a procedural matter as far as requesting the additional capital work that we've already approved in the 2025 capital budget, technically be sole source to Elgin Contracting and overseen by DEI Consulting Engineers because they're already involved with the project and they're quite aware of the work that is required. Just as a background, a quick summary, we know that the pool was closed in November of 2024 and the main scope of the work is to add additional HVAC unit, add exhaust systems, and then to install all the ductwork that supports all of that, as well as fixing things that have deteriorated that were there since opening. A few highlights of that is to repair the existing high-level wall that was below the high bay windows. We know that there's been some temporary work done there to make sure that we could remain open until the renovation was ready to go, as well as evaluating and modifying the sprinkler system, cleaning and repainting roof beams and the sprinkler piping, and repainting basically the interior of the center. Once the pool was closed, DEI, as always was the plan, completed a very detailed inspection of the space. They brought in a couple additional contractors to inspect the area. One was the sprinkler piping company to do a comprehensive review of the system, and the other was a painting consultant to go over all of the condition of every finished surface in the aquatic center, which was the concrete block wall, the steel, the window frames, and whatnot. Through that, we know that there was some concerning points that were above and beyond what we had hoped. First of all, the evaluation on the sprinkler system came back, and it's recommended that the sprinkler system be replaced and not simply repainted and left in place in the high bay, so the highest portion of the pool. We are being told that that sprinkler piping should be completely replaced. And then the low bay, which is above the deepest portion of the pool, however, it's also closest to the return ductwork for the existing HVAC equipment, is in good enough shape just to be repainted. So we save a little bit of cost there. And I think it can be concluded that because that's so close to the return ductwork, that piping was kept in better condition, as well as not being as high up in the humid environment. Through the additional inspections and the reports that we got back, there was a lot of collaboration between all the departments involved, including building and development, corporate services, and finance, as well as just basically Brent checking in and making sure that everybody was on the same page. There were a lot of conversations going back and forth between DEI consulting engineers, ourselves, the architect, the painting consultant, and through all of that, a change order was brought forward by Elgin Contracting that basically outlines that we need to do more work than what we had hoped. And it basically comes down to the humidity was worse than what we thought. And there's a lot of residue left over from the previous salt system, as well as chemical residue from chlorine and chloramines that existed within the high humidity environment. So there's, instead of just simply cleaning and repainting, we now have to involve sandblasting, grinding the steel, removing drywall and replacing it on the west end of the pool, and a lot of power washing of the existing surfaces that are steel and aluminum, because there's a lot of existing chemical residue as well as salt. All of this is labor intensive. All of it is very time consuming. It's going to take days to weeks to complete. In addition to that, all the steel columns were tested for rust, as well as the amount of epoxy that existed on them. And of the steel columns that exist, 4 of them failed testing, so we need to retreat 4 of the steel columns. That's a relatively small part of the project. And we also need to do some sanding of the existing wooden ceiling that exists above the pool. There's some humidity and water damage that exists as part of that. And so the contractor has recommended that we basically spot sand that to make it look as good as possible without replacing the wood deck as a whole, and that'll save us quite a bit of money. We have to replace a lot of caulking, which is around the door frames and between roof joints and everything else, that where the caulking is for the transitions between the different materials. And then when we repaint, it's recommended that we use epoxy, and the epoxy will last a lot longer than the latex that is currently there. So again, it's a lot of labor intensive work that is over and above what the idea was when we first closed the pool down, and it was not able to be completely evaluated and determined until after the pool was closed and we could get the scaffolding in place and we would be able to get a close look at it. The total cost of the change order is close to $120,000. This is already within the approved contingency fund as part of the total project of $150,000. But what we are requesting is an increase to that contingency fund in case more issues arise. And if we had more issues arise and it went over and above the remaining contingency, we would have to delay the project to come to council for more funding further. As far as what we would expect that to include, the hope is that once we get through this work, the remainder of the project is much more straightforward, because we're talking about an HVAC installation of ductwork and the electrical and gas to support that. The overall scope of that sounds like it's going to be much less risk to unforeseen circumstances, but it's not impossible. In a project of this size, to expect additional work to come up based on evaluations once the project is approved and contractors can get in and look at things, that's not all that uncommon. And what we want to make sure is that the timelines don't impede the flow of the work. And for that's the reason that we're asking for the contingency ahead of time. Obviously, if we don't need it, we won't use it all. And the request of the amount of $150,000 is based on two things. Number one is we still have a lot of mechanical work left. And as well, we do have some known issues as far as moisture penetration in a couple of areas that we haven't been able to fully evaluate yet. The main one being there's an area of concern with possible water penetration through the roof or a wall and not just humidity. But Matt can speak to more of the details of that and what that includes. We don't anticipate that being a huge issue, but just in case it's bigger than what we see because we haven't been able to take that apart and look at it fully, we just want to be prepared. And then lastly, we have the approved capital items, which we had gone to council earlier this year and got approved as a capital budget. Normally, they would be part of a future maintenance shutdown, but we're trying to take advantage of the current renovation to get that completed now, which is where we were looking at to get the pool filters replaced, some deck tile replaced, treat the stainless steel railings, regrouting the pool, and replacing any doors and hardware that need to be replaced, as well as doing the core samples of the pool deck to make sure that our pool shell is still in good shape for the next 15 to 20 years. And that was already approved for a budget of $222,000 and change. And that was one carryover project plus the 2025 capital. In any other year, we would do that as part of a regular maintenance shutdown. And we're just hoping to sort of take advantage of the timelines now. And we're hoping that we can get that done, like I said before, if we can get permission to have DEI oversee it and Elgin Contracting to complete the work, because they're both already aware of the condition of the space and they are aware of what work needs to be required. And we would, as a town, be able to do that without being designated a constructor under the Occupation Health and Safety Act, which is something that's an advantage in protecting us for liability. It has not been determined if the additional work will extend the closure beyond what has been established. The most time-consuming aspect of the project continues to be the delivery and installation of the HVAC unit, which Matt can provide more details on. We did get a notice that the HVAC unit is in production. However, the original delivery schedule, it sounds like there's a bit of a delay there in the supply chain, and it won't be ready when they first thought it would be. However, we're not talking months delayed. We're talking probably weeks. And that gives us an advantage in the sense that we can get some of this other work done, and it certainly doesn't stop us from getting some of this other work done while we're waiting for it. So just to summarize, the total award of the pool upgrades began at $1.7 million without HST, and that included a contingency of $150,000, and $70,000 of that was expected to be consulting fees and DEI. And the additional work with the change order would utilize $120,000 of that contingency fund. And we're just worried that the remaining contingency would not be enough to cover anything significant that is coming up that isn't foreseen. So that's why we're requesting an additional $150,000. And again, if nothing comes up, it won't be used and it won't cost us. And then obviously the budget deliberations earlier this year, we got approved for the additional work, and we're asking for that to be sole source to DEI and overseen by DEI and completed by Elgin Contracting. And Matt can provide an update on the timeline of the HVAC delivery and anything he knows about the updated construction schedule, because he touched base with Elgin Contracting earlier today, and then after that we can answer any questions.
Yeah, hello. So based on what we've heard from the unit manufacturer, there was a supply chain issue with the compressors of the unit, and it pushed the delivery from early March to mid-May. So basically has extended that part of the project by 2 months. Based on our preliminary contract documents, we had a substantial completion of April 25th. Talking to Elgin Contracting, we're expecting that date to have pushed about 2 months. So we're looking at substantial completion around June 25th. That's kind of the update. In that time frame, we've certainly done a fair amount of work inside the building, demolition, surface prep. We did a lot of sprinkler investigation, as Doug touched on earlier. We did deck drain replacement, that's ongoing, as well as domestic piping modifications as well. So in terms of, that's what's kind of been done so far. On top of all the sizing and review by the contractors for the current work, including steel manufacturing for the reinforcement for the air handling unit. Okay.
So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Luna.
Thank you, Richard. So I'm just confused about the motion. The motion reads an additional $100,000, and you're asking for $150,000?
I think that's a misprint in the agenda. It says,
Oh,
I just caught
You
it.
have it?
It says in the report, it says 150, but on the agenda, it says 100. So I think
Yeah,
there's,
it does.
I think there was a misprint there. Okay,
Okay.
I just caught that as well, so
So
thank you.
150.
Yeah.
So, and I think you answered my question. You're asking, like at first I thought, why are you asking for an additional, you will have $30,000 in the contingency plan in the fund, but you're asking for an additional 150, but that's because of the extra work that if we approve to have that done, just to cover that. Is that correct? Steph's shaking her head, no?
Well, through your worship to Council Luna, what we're asking for is the additional 150,000 after. So we are committing, or we are requesting that $120,000 be approved for a change order,
Right.
which would only leave us $30,000 left in the contingency. And if there was a major issue that we don't foresee, we don't anticipate a major issue after this, but if there is one, we would have to delay the project
Right.
to return to council to get additional funding at that time.
But your new contingency is going to be 180,000 then? With the
Correct,
30 you
if
have?
approved.
Right, okay. So I'm disappointed that the date is now June 25th. That's really bringing it out. But I do agree with getting all the work done because I don't think the public are going to tolerate another shutdown in September or next year or whatever for this additional work. So I do agree with getting it done. So.
Councilor Craig Mao?
Thank you, Worship. I agree with Councillor Luna that it makes sense to get everything done in this time frame so that additional funds that we had already earmarked to be spent, that 200 and whatever it was, 22,000, whatever it happened to be. I guess I'm a little disappointed that we're coming back with a change order of tune of $120,000. Because every time we talk about this, we say, are you sure this is all the funds we're going to need? And it's just keeps on going. So I'm of the opinion that if you need additional funds or another change order, I don't think council is going to be the stumbling block. We can arrange for a fairly immediate council chamber to look at one, council sitting to look at one item. So I'm not sure I want to approve any more money. You've got enough in your contingency, and I'm just going to not say any more.
Further questions, comments? Mr. White, there's a perception from the public, and I keep hearing it, that nothing's going on. Can you explain the work, and do you have weekly meetings with your contractor? Because I've heard it again and again and again, and I witnessed it myself today. I was up there. There's nothing going on. So I'm concerned. We always try and do on time, on budget, but given the ask tonight, I'm just concerned that this project's going totally sideways, to be quite frank.
Yeah, so part of the thing that I guess the public's not seeing is that the unit shipment has been pushed by 2 months. So the majority of the mechanical, electrical work has to take place when that unit shows up. So that they can't size the ductwork, do the layout until that unit is placed, the roof curb is placed. So a lot of the work outside of the, let's say the prep work is tied to that mechanical electrical system. So the project is delayed because of that. So the contractor, Elgin, has done as much work as they could to move the project along. But part of that investigation, I guess, is hard to see that we've been deliberating on. So that the painting consultant, basically, we had to shut the pool down, get all the scaffolding in place, and then he's up on a lift, we're inspecting, and then we deliberate on what we need to do next. The sprinkler system has to get shut down and drained, and then we had to cut sections, take samples, and investigate to see what happens next. So a lot of that takes time. We want to make sure we do it right so it's not closed down a second time. So there's been a lot of deliberation, I guess, on top of the delays from the air handling unit that's been taking up the time. Unfortunately, it's a very visible space, so you're going to get questions on it, but there is good reasoning why it looks like nothing's going on, but there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. The pool had to be closed down, I guess, to do all those investigations. Sorry.
I understand that, but I mean, do you meet weekly with the contractor to keep the staff up to date, or how often do you have meetings? Just, I know when we did the Downtown project, we had a lot of communication, and quite frankly, I'm sensing some frustration at council because we thought, you know, we keep hearing from the public that, you know, nothing's going on and then everything's going well. I get the delay on the air conditioning unit, but I mean, we're at the end of March. I mean, I thought we would have known before now. You know, I guess where I'm leading this is that did we make a mistake in shutting the pool down too early? It looks in the public's eyes that we're not well prepared because they're not seeing progress. We're not, you know, this is the first time tonight that we heard that it's going to be delayed until June. You must understand my frustration as an elected official because I'm not happy about this because we're not on time, we're not on budget, and I don't think we're well communicated to. You understand my frustration?
Yeah, understood. Yeah, we do meet weekly with Elgin, whether over the phone or in person. And we've been meeting with the staff as well. So that has been communicated.
But it's just been communicated until this week that it's going to be this late delayed? Because that wasn't my understanding as of the last council meeting.
Yeah, that was a recent development, I guess, for us.
How recent?
As well.
How recent?
I want to say last week, I guess, is when we got it formally made to us.
Well, I want to reiterate that it'd be nice for us to know because we expressed concern over the fact that it seemed nothing's happening, and now, you know, a week's gone by and we're sitting here tonight saying, oh, it's going to be another couple months. I'm just not happy about that. Can you understand that?
Understood, yeah.
So what do we do to improve that going forward?
Well, we've set up, we have formalized, I guess, our weekly meetings with the town staff. And then we've tried to open up as much communication as possible about that. I've been in communication with the manufacturer rep and Elgin to give me updates almost daily now on the other progress in the project. So we're trying to make sure that we have constant communication, more than just the weekly communication that we had done previously.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from council? Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. I don't normally do this, but I sit here a little bit frustrated because at the start of this project, I had concerns that the contingency wasn't big enough to begin with because there was a lot of unknowns. And I was assured at that point that this was a standard, and given what we knew, this was okay. So that's strike number one for me. Strike number two is I said, should we be shutting this down in November, given the fact that HVAC equipment is notoriously late? And again, I was assured, no, this will be good, this will be good. So I'm not proposing that I have a crystal ball or that I know better than you, but it's 2 points I brought up that are now coming back in our face at the end of March when this project was supposed to be completed the end of next month. So I'm just a bit frustrated right now.
Yeah, that's understood. I guess I also want to reiterate, we also shut the pool down because of the concerns of the condition getting worse. So without a properly sized unit, further deterioration of all the equipment inside the space would happen. So that's also part of the reasoning why we shut it down when we did. We also had anticipated this work happening, right? We had a substantial completion date of April 25th. It's just that we didn't, a lot of the stuff that was discovered was because they had to get up on a lift with the scaffolding over top of the pool to investigate. A lot of the deterioration of the steel, we weren't aware of that there was latex paint on all the block. So a lot of the time that is now having to happen is because of all the additional prep work that is involved with removing the latex primer, latex paint. So that's stuff that we couldn't have known at the time, and we didn't anticipate because the contract documents had stated that it was epoxy, but we've now determined that it's actually latex that was installed. So a lot of those items that are kind of picked up in that supplemental instruction or change notice are just things that we couldn't have known at the time and wouldn't anticipate.
That leads me to a question that might get me in trouble, but so you're suggesting there were things on the original tender that weren't followed. Are we going to find more?
Well, the bulk of that has been with the construction and the paint and the epoxy, that kind of thing. So the mechanical systems and electrical systems are fairly straightforward. That's why we're assuming that, the contingency that we have should be suitable. But we just want to have something in place just in case something completely unknown happens, that we were able to get that money fairly quickly. So
I guess my suggestion is that, in my own mind, there were corners cut on the HVAC system. You're telling me now there's corners cut on the finishes. Are you sure there's no corners cut on the structure? The structure is sound? And that's not an unreasonable question.
Yeah, the structure is good. We've had that investigated. We're not concerned about the structure. It's visible in the space.
Okay. Forgive me, I'm not trying to be combative, but the reality is we had a pipe fall from the roof. So I just want to be sure. But if we've discovered things where they weren't originally a spec, that's concerning to me. You can understand my,
so we've already addressed some of those items already, right? With the pipe falling, say all the hangers have been replaced already. So those types of items have been addressed previously. So yeah. So the mechanical scope, the ductwork in the space, the power feed to the unit, the piping is fairly straightforward. So.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Staff want to add anything other than, grumpy mayor? Anything else you want to talk about?
The only thing I might add is just we go back to the original meeting where the unique part about this is just the corrosion due to the salt system that used to exist. And you add that to the fact that there was poor airflow, poor air quality, not enough HVAC, not enough moisture removal. It just the three factors of the chemical off-gassing residue plus the salt plus the high moisture, that's really what has led us to this situation today. And unfortunately, it's a unique set of circumstances that is not common in a lot of pool environments. And a lot of this change order is labor intensive because we've got to sandblast, we've got to power wash, we've got to make sure we get rid of all that salt residue, or all the restoration work we do will be for naught. And unfortunately, until we got a close look at everything that was up high, which we couldn't do until the scaffolding was in place, we couldn't do until the consultants were brought in on scissor lifts, we just weren't aware of how bad it was. So in that light, I think we're still going down the right path of getting things done right so that we don't end up back in this situation within 5 or 10 years. I really think that's the long-term goal. And I think, really short-term pain for long-term gain. And I don't think we're going down the wrong path here. I think we've had a lot of meetings. There's been a lot of collaboration, and we're really trying to get the proper things done. And we can't control the delivery schedule of the HVAC unit. The initial conversations I was a part of with the manufacturer, they were quite confident that the unit was something they could produce on time. And it wasn't a salesperson, it was the manufacturing operations staff that were telling us that this unit was going to be delivered on schedule, and unfortunately, that's something we can't control. So we sort of focus on what we can control, which is all this additional work that's going to really be important to do right the first time. That's the only thing I can add to that.
Okay. Further questions, Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if, when we get to the motion, if we should divide these two items out into two motions, because it seems that some aren't in favor of one part of it and maybe in favor of the other part. So I don't know how we vote on both of them when they're together. So I'd be willing to make that motion that we,
Sure. Yeah.
there's more conversation.
I'll go, if I can come back to you, I'll go to Councillor Lucas first, and I'll come back to you, and I'll let you put it on the floor if that's okay with Councillor Lucas. Just before, okay.
Thank you, through the mayor. Question then, the HVAC system's delayed. Does that delay the rest of the project? Can the sandblasting, the painting, the rest of the restoration uncover any other issues that might be had? Because I'm assuming that it's a rooftop unit, so can the interior finishes be done, or is that not part of the sequencing?
Yeah, actually, sandblasting's going to start next week, so we're planning on moving ahead with all the other items that we can. Like the deck floor, the deck drain replacement, sorry, has taken place already, because that's one of the things we can do without any of the other items. So we're trying to do as much as possible, but certainly sandblasting, power washing can all take place now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, did you want to speak to the motion, or is it, where are you at?
Councillor Irving was trying to tell me something, but I think the way it reads here is that.
You just push the button, please. Yeah.
Well, I guess that the DCS 19-20-25 natatorium additional updates report be received, and that council approve the additional $150,000 contingency for the natatorium to be funded from the general capital reserve be one motion, and then that council approved the sole sourcing of the additional pool upgrades by DEI Consulting Engineers and Elgin Contracting and Restoration Limited to be completed within the approved budget.
So the desire by Councillor Luna, then, do you want to just put how about we just have you put the first motion on the floor then, so that, Councillor Luna wants to make a motion that DCS 19-20-25 natatorium additional updates report be received, and the council approve the additional $150,000 contingency for the natatorium to be funded from the general capital reserve, period, being the first motion. Moved by Councillor Luna. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Pridham. Discussion. Councillor Craigmile, did you want to have anything to add to that, or just because you had raised this, the reason for the split?
I'm going to vote against this because I think it's very easy. If there's another overrun, we could have a special meeting at council. It doesn't take weeks or months, it's 2 or 3 days.
Further comments? Councillor Alward.
I guess I apologize. I mean, maybe somebody could, maybe Councillor Craigmile could explain this to me. To me, it just doesn't matter. Like, we're approving the 150. It just comes back to us anyway. Is it just for the sake of like displaying that we're angry with the situation? Like, I don't really understand the point.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, through the mayor. My point is that if you just have a larger contingency there, then it's very easy just to tap into the contingency to get work done without coming and getting the blessing of council. I think it also puts the onus on the prime contractor too. He's got $120,000, he's got $340,000 additional work already. Let's be very efficient with that, and let's get things done. We know how things have gone on. We're delaying the project 2 months. The contractor has to take some responsibility for what they said they were going to deliver and what they do deliver.
Further comments? Councillor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. I would also agree. I'm like I say, I'm a bit annoyed with where where we're at on this project and considering we're now possibly 3 months away from reopening just in time for summer for the quarry to be open. So I also agree. I think there's more than enough money being thrown around at the contractor. I think some onus needs to go back on them to get this project going.
Okay, so I'll just read the motion again, just so everyone's clear. Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded by Councillor Pridham, the DCS 19-20-25 natatorium. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Additional updates report be received, and that council approved the additional $150,000 contingency for the natatorium to be funded from the general capital reserve. Okay, anything further? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated. So, Councillor, I'm going to refer to you again then for the second part of the motion. Would you put that on the floor, please? Yeah.
Recommendation is that council approve the sole sourcing of the additional pool upgrades by DEI Consulting Engineers and Elgin Contracting Restoration Limited to be completed within the improved budget.
So just for clarification on that, can I ask the CEO that means we haven't approved an additional contingency, but the second motion is to do with just the extra work, correct?
Yeah, so through your worship, you've already budget approved the $222,000. Typically, as Doug said in his report, this would have been done during shutdown. Various components of it would have been procured to different contractors, but just in an effort of being as expeditious as possible, it makes a lot of sense to let Elgin Contracting be the general and procure all of this work for us and have it be supervised by DEI.
Okay, so everyone understand that one? Okay. So Councillor Luna has moved that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Pridham. Discussion. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? The motion's carried. Jenna, did you capture all that? We're okay with? Yes. That's right, that's the intention. The intention was to split it up, and the first one would, okay? And I'll just finish writing this out. Okay, thank you for your report. Was there anything further with regards to this matter? Okay, thank you for your report. Okay, moving on then to 8.3.1 with regards to administration monthly report. Mr. Kittmer, please.
I'm going to take my cue from the tone that Mr. Kelly set with his brevity, and I'll ask my SMT to take note of that as well as they present their reports, because I know council has a long night before them. So my monthly report is fairly brief. I'm just going to make note of council that with respect to the downtown service location review, at the meeting you had asked me about next steps, so I have discussed that in here, as well as you'd asked me about the length of time it would take to give notice on the LPA for PC Connect, and I've included that at 120 days. The only thing I'm going to primarily point out is that in terms of our community outreach, our new community outreach worker is settling into the role quite nicely and is advancing some of our goals around educating the community on community wellness initiatives. So you'll see a number listed here in the report. In particular, you'll start seeing some regular social media and posts come out about various topics around community wellness, and we are going to mimic similar to what the police do with Coffee with the Police. We're going to do Coffee with the Outreach Worker on April 12th. That's the balance of what I'm going to provide, and I know Jenna has a couple quick points as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kittmer. Because I really love stats lately, and I didn't do so well in math, I'm going to try to see how well I do with this nowadays. Marriage modernization that you approved and went into effect for January 20th, only 2 short months ago. The town of St. Mary's has now issued 13 marriage licenses. There are 3 appointments booked, so another 3 licenses, and there were 2 applications that were just submitted today. That's really exciting. If I can compare that to stats from 2023, we had 31 licenses for the entire year, and in 2022, we had 39 licenses. In just 2 months, not even a full quarter for this year, we are already at 1/3 of the way to meeting. So I think it's been a significant success. What I believe the reasoning is, people want to go online. When they Google, how do I get a marriage license, they go to the provincial website and it automatically directs them to a local municipality within 50 kilometers radius of their home, and they can come here. But I think this excitement's going to die down in 2026 when all municipalities are anticipated across the province to move to an online portal system, and we won't see that continued opportunity, which is quite okay because I think it's a great opportunity for other clerks across Ontario to be able to experience that fun too. So I wanted to give you that detail. Data management, one last point. It has been an ongoing topic. You've heard more than enough from me, but we've actually moved to shredding a number of documents that we are well aware of what they were. We have reference material that understands we had those documents in our care and possession at one time. We've now disposed of them. That is 1,500 pounds of paper alone, which is 62.5 cubic feet. When I figured that out, if you spread that out across a room, it's much bigger than the average size bedroom if you were to put all of those boxes across that space. More records to come. That was only about 50 boxes. We already have another 94 prepared to go, and we're anticipating to look at, I think we just set today, another 80 as a target for 2025 alone to get through, do the review, and mark for destruction. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Questions with regards to administration? Councillor Alward.
Who's doing all that shredding? Specifically. Is it all just you?
No, no, it's not, nor is it staff. We've contracted that service out. In order to move 50 boxes out of a building and into a large truck to be shredded, it took almost about 45 minutes to do. For the truck to shred it, and they'll take whatever has been collected over the years too. So binder clips, bindings, binders, anything of that nature, they will shred right there on site. We can go out to the truck, we can watch it on their little screen to see it being done, and they give us a certificate of destruction at that time to confirm everything has been disposed of in a secure manner. Not staff, no.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, the suggested motion is admin 11-2025. Thank you for that report. 2025 March monthly report administration be received for information. Someone like to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded. Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next report is with regards to the Kinsman Summerfest. Ms. McCartney, please.
Thank you. Council, you've seen a report very similar to this. The only change is dates now for 2025. There's a request for exemptions to your noise bylaw, to your parks bylaw, as well as your traffic, parking, and boulevard maintenance bylaw. Everything is detailed within the recommendation. If you do approve it this evening, notice will go out to that organization, and they'll move forward with the project. Thank you.
Okay. Questions with regards to the request? Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor that admin 12-2025 Kinsman Club of St. Mary's Summerfest request for noise bylaw exemption and access to Milt Donald Field report be received, and the council grant exemption to noise bylaw under section 6 to the applicant Kinsman Club of St. Mary's at Milt Donald Field for the purpose of Summerfest until the time of 1 a.m. on July 4th, 2025, 1 a.m. on July 5th, 2025, and 1 a.m. on July 6th, 2025, subject to the conditions of notifying all property owners within a 150-meter radius. And the council grant exclusive use of Milt Donald Field to the Kinsman Club of St. Mary's between Monday, June 2025 until Monday, July 7, 2025, for the purpose of setting up, running, and taking down the Summerfest, with the exception of the use of the space by the St. Mary's Farmers Market on Saturday, July 5th, 2025, and the council grant exemption to the Parks Bylaw under sections 1A, B, K, and L to the applicant Kinsman Club of St. Mary's at Milton Field between June 30th, 2025 and July 7th, 2025, and the council grant an exemption to the Traffic, Parking, and Boulevard Maintenance Bylaw under section 3.13, Q 3.14, and 3.16 to the applicant Kinsman Club of St. Mary's at Milt Donald Field between June 30th, 2025 and July 7th, 2025. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Councillor Alwood?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, just with that that statement, just for transparency, we have discussed with the Kinsman a little bit about potentially trying to move the farmers market for that Saturday. There was some discussion about parking and all that. That discussion has yet to take place fully with the farmers market, but I'm just wondering, do we have to come back and get approval again if that does happen, or?
No, if the farmer's market takes to a different location in town as the suggestion, no, it would just, as long as it still works with both users, that's great.
Okay, anything further? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Jenna. The next report is with regard to World Autism Day proclamation request.
Thank you. Council, this came before you last year. The date is within the recommendation for April the 2nd, as has been past practice. If you do proclaim, we'll share with our communications team and they'll put out notice in advance to April 2nd so the community is aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions with regards to this request? I'll put the motion on the floor that amend 13-2025 World Autism Day proclamation request report be received, and the council proclaim April 2nd, 2025 as World Autism Day in St. Mary's. Someone want to move that motion? Councillor Alward, seconded by Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next report with regards to petition for drainage. Jenna, please.
Thank you. Council, for most of you, this is a new process that's before you this evening. The application or the petition has come before you by the town's road authority. Mr. Wolf, I believe, is on the line to support with any technical questions that you may have, and I thank him for his assistance with understanding the process. So the Ontario Drainage Act is what prescribes the process for this. There are a significant number of details that have to be achieved in order to bring this forward and get it to the final mark. We are in the very beginning stages. The purpose is, for now, is that we're seeking approval from council to appoint the engineer by resolution. That engineer will then move forward with conducting or preparing an engineer's report that speaks to the petition and any potential affected properties or property owners within the area. The area in question is Queen Street East, and it is also within the area of our boundary property with Perth South. The budget for the works of this project have been included in the 2025 capital budget, which you've already approved. Following the appointment, the engineer will hold an on-site meeting and the necessary parties will be notified to attend that. Then the engineer begins with their report. They'll come up with a final report and we'll bring further information back to council at that time to discuss with you what your next steps are. And as I said, there are a number of steps, so we'll make sure that we detail that with you. An engineer, once they're appointed, the prescribed time is 1 year to return a report. So we would expect to see something within the next year. Mr. Kelly, have I missed anything? Or I'm sorry, Mr. Wolf, have I missed anything?
No, Jenna, that was very good.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Edney.
Thank you, Worship. I had just a a question about the process. We're appointing an engineer, not an engineering firm.
Yes, you're correct. We did mention the firm, but we have to be very specific about the engineer. If we only were to appoint the firm at this time, we would need to understand from the engineering firm who they would appoint, and we need to come back to you and ask for that to be presented in a motion or a bylaw. We have gone with a motion in this instance.
Councilor Pridham?
Yes, question. Does this affect property owners, like a cost to the property owners if this were to go through?
Yes, so part of the intent of the report that's prepared by the engineer, when they assess what that situation is, where the drainage is coming from, what the impacted property owners are, then it is based on assessment value just for benefiting properties. So they'll have a calculation in order to get to that amount. Just to jump forward in the process a little bit, once that amount is known in the final report, it comes before council. Council will approve the report if they so wish to then move on to council appointing a court of revision. So it can have members of, or it has members of a council, not all of council on it. And that is an opportunity for the engineer to present the information, including what those assessed dollars are for each of the benefiting properties. And if a property owner takes issue with that, then there's an appeal process, and the Court of Revision is the one who hears that and makes a decision on the matter.
Okay, further questions? Okay, Councilwoman Erica.
Thank you. And this is necessary because we would like some alterations to property that is outside of our boundary. Is that the reason for this?
Mr. Wolf, I'm going to defer that question to you because I believe you have a better understanding of exactly where the water and the drainage concerns are coming from.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.
Your worship to Councillor Pridham. The Drainage Act is a specific piece of legislation that works well in a situation where you're crossing municipal borders. If it was purely within the boundaries of St. Mary's, we would have different options for sort of apportioning cost. But the Drainage Act doesn't really necessarily care about municipal borders. So this is an opportunity where that process can happen, including those properties outside of our jurisdiction. But also it has specific rights in terms of pathways to drainage and access to land for drainage. So when we preliminary took a look at this, our expectation is that there are a couple different options, and some of them are going to be more beneficial in terms of an overall length and cost for installing new pipe. So it does open up that opportunity where a pipe doesn't necessarily have to be installed within a municipal road allowance or a town of St. Mary's municipal road allowance.
Okay, further questions? Councilor Pridham?
So we did a substantial amount of work at that end of town with the retrenching and layering. I'm assuming it's like Queen Street, right, east, so that area. And all of that work then isn't sufficient. We're still pursuing other avenues to divert water, and it's necessary.
Through your worship, Councillor Pridham, yes, the work that we did last year was purely to alleviate the scouring effect of the water within the ditch. The ditch experienced significant scouring through several of those storms. The slope of the ditch was too steep to accommodate the flow that was going through it at the velocity it was. So what we did was nothing to do with capacity. We didn't increase the capacity of the ditch or the storm sewer. We merely slowed the water down so that the velocity of the water was reduced so that it had less of a scouring impact on the area.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in here to help a little bit. So in this instance, your St. Mary's stormwater system is taking and receiving a significant amount of water from Per South properties. So even if we wanted to we have an obligation to make sure that our storm system functions and it doesn't flood out St. Mary's properties, which is what's happening right now. There are ways for us to intercept that water before it gets into our stormwater system and find proper outlet. But we'd be paying for it wholly ourselves, even though it's not our water. So the Drainage Act is pretty clear that a property owner has responsibility for their own drainage on their own property. So, legally, we're not supposed to be receiving that water. We may need to find new and proper outlet that is through road allowances that are not owned by the town of St. Mary's, and the Drainage Act is the most prescriptive way to get that access legally, and through clear process. So essentially, you're doing this to protect your taxpayers and your businesses.
But I'm also understanding that it's not necessarily cutting through St. Mary's property. We're looking at totally diverting the water.
Maybe, maybe, right? Yeah, or maybe they find that we need to just to upsize some of our pipes to provide proper outlet. But again, if we're doing that to accommodate water that's outside our borders, we have no way to apportion that cost to anybody except for our own taxpayers. This gives us the ability to spread the cost fairly. But as it said in the report, I've had a number of experiences with petitions like this where the road authority comes forward. More often than not, when it's the road authority initiating it, the road authority is the one that pays the bill.
Okay, anything further on this? Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor then, that admin 14-2025 petition for drainage Queen Street East report be received, and that the petition for drainage submitted by the Town of St. Mary's Road Authority for Queen Street East be accepted, and that written notice of this decision be provided to the persons prescribed in OReg 500-21, and that George Verican P. Engineer of Sprite Associates Limited be appointed to prepare an engineer's report for this petition in accordance with Section 8(1) of the Ontario Drainage Act. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded. Councillor Alward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. So I suggest maybe we should take 10 minutes. We've been at it for 2.5 hours, so we'll take a little break. Okay, we'll resume if everyone's okay. Item 8.4, Building and Development, March monthly report. Mr. Brower, please.
Good evening, council. You have my report in front of you. A couple things I kind of want to bring to your attention. First of all, we have 2 plan applications that we're dealing with right now. An application for draft plan of condominium for 428 Queen Street West, as well as a zoning bylaw amendment for 121 Ontario Street South. Both of these applications have been to the Planning Advisory Committee. One of these applications, the draft plan of condominium, will be in front of council at their next council meeting. And then the application for 121 Ontario Street will be in front of council in late April, if I have my timelines right. Other thing I want to bring, two other items I want to bring to your attention is the planning seminar. The planning seminar, it went fairly well. There was roughly 35 people there. A number of them were council staff as well as committee members. A lot of the committee members felt it was good training even for them, and kind of the information that we did bring forward, the information that we did review. So we've had some people touch base with us that were in attendance based on some things they want to do with their property and stuff like that. So overall, it went very well. The last thing I want to do that I want to bring to your attention is that we're starting to put out our tenders, and RFPs are starting to come back. One of them is for the 177 Church Street South. So we did have 2 tenders going out. We're going to be talking one of them within my next report for the Lynn Sportsplex. But the one for the museum came back and it was under budget by roughly $6,000. So we are seeing some variable pricing across with our tenders, but that is a bit of a good news story that we are seeing tenders that are coming under, and not everything is over budget. With that being said, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Alward.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm not sure how familiar you'll be with this grant, but with regards to the museum roof leak, is it leaking in the same spot as it was roughly this time last year, kind of thing, or?
From what I understand, it is, but I don't know detailed information about it, but what I've understood is that it keeps on leaking in the same location inside, and they're having some hit and miss, so to speak, with repairing it. From what I understand, they have it isolated and they're in the process of getting it repaired. So,
okay.
Okay. Further questions for Grant? All right, seeing nothing, I'll put a motion on the floor that DEV 04-2025 March monthly report, Building and Development, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward. Seconder? Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next item is the Lynn Sportsplex floor replacement. Mr. Brower, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. You'll see a staff report in front of you that talks about the overage of one of our recent procurements. Basically, we had a budget of $10,000 and it came at $16,876. Causing a project overage of $5,200. With that, we're adding a contingency of $1,000, asking for a variance or an increase in the project of $6,200 based on the report. Notwithstanding, it's how does it balance out? How is the rest of our procurement going? These are probably our first 2 projects. This one in the carpet replacement, and the carpet replacement project did come under budget. So,
okay, any questions with regards to this project? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put a motion on the floor then. The DEV 08-2025 Lynn Sportsplex Lounge Floor Replacement Report be received, and the council approves a variance of $6,197.87 to be incurred in the delivery of the Lynn Sportsplex Lounge Floor Replacement Project as identified in DEV 08-2025 Lynn Sportsplex Lounge Floor Replacement Report to be funded from the Facilities Reserve account, and the staff proceed with project award to JSB Construction Limited. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Grant. Okay, moving on to Corporate Services Monthly Report. Mr. Marin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, I will keep it short as well this evening. Just a couple of highlights for you. Taxes receivable, you'll note the amount there in the report. I just want to bring this up. I know I was in a monthly treasurer's meeting last month. A lot of municipalities are suggesting that their taxes receivable have seen some increases over the last couple of years. For us, it is a little slightly higher than normal, but we're still well within the kind of that range of 3.5% to 4%, which is where we typically are, but something we are monitoring. So again, I'll keep you up to date if we see any changes on that front. On the communication side, we have hired a new communication specialist. She'll be starting later in April, which will also mean you'll see some notes in my report around the website project and also the addition of having to redo the tourism website. We're just working through some information and quotes in relation to that, and we'll be bringing more information forward shortly on that front. But we will be moving forward with the website project in April to be completed by our due date of September on that front. And then just lastly, just a reminder for council that we do have our service club information night tomorrow evening at 6:30 at the PRC. With that, happy to answer any questions council might have.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Marin? Councillor Alward?
Thanks, Your Worship. Not a question here, Andre, but I did want to mention the Begin Your Business in St. Mary's social media campaign. I thought that was Banana Pancakes awesome. I thought it was just incredible how well it was shot and the different interviews they did with each business owner. I was just very impressed. And as the BIA rep, I hope that we can lean into more content like that and that the BIA will also lean into some content like that. So just to pass that along for me.
Thank you very much. And certainly we're very happy with the uptake we've had in those videos. Certainly we're getting a lot of new users in relation to it, or new subscribers, but it's getting a lot of views, a lot of attention, and certainly it leads to, hopefully it'll lead to some of our downtown businesses being occupied that are currently vacant. But again, there are promising looks on that front. And as I've suggested before, something we want to do much better moving forward is the use of video. It is the new trend out there that people like to view videos versus in regards to their content. So that is certainly something you should continue to see from us on that front. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from council? All right, suggested motion is a COR 16-2025 March monthly report, corporate services be received for information. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Alward, second by Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to Fire and Emergency Services. Chief Anderson, are you there, please?
Yes, Your Worship, I am. Pleased to present the monthly report for March. I was on vacation there, as you can see, and then upon return, I assumed the Perth County Fire Coordinator position in the absence of Chief Bill Hunter. During the month, you can see that the fire department had responded to 22 emergencies, so it was a busy month there. Average attendance of firefighters was 12, which we can discuss if you will. Duty officers, myself included, would be 3 calls alone. So far the department has responded to a total of 32 calls for service. We're actually at 40 as of today, compared to 19 last year. So another busy year. So let's go. I'll just explain about the average attendance, and could be it is a bit of a concern. So there's several factors contributing to this. The lower average of attendance. There's a leave of absence right now by 2 personnel. Personnel that are working out of town, personnel that are away on courses, personnel on vacation, conducting normal everyday today life, as you can see, childcare and such. And some of it as well as local employers becoming less supportive to allow personnel to leave work. So the issue may be compounded a little bit further. It says for 2 more firefighters. As a matter of fact, One of those firefighters that was going to be placed on leave of absence is resigning at the end of the month. He's got employment as a police officer, so he's moving on. So the fire department, we continue to use various means to keep in contact with each other through our WhatsApp and who's responding. I've already had the discussion with all of the firefighters, the importance of maintaining communications, letting each other know when they're out of town. If they're gone to work for the day and they cannot leave work, they place themselves out of work for how many hours, so that we have a better assessment of what we're dealing with for those responses and such. So with the deputy fire chief, senior officers and such, I'm going to continue to monitor the situation. Does improve, we're going to have to maybe look at some other alternatives. One thing to know though, don't fret if we had say for whatever reason a low attendance and we actually had say working fire that was beyond our means. We always have mutual aid, so we have 3 different departments that we can choose from that can make their way for assistance, just as we would for them. Does anybody wish to discuss that now before I move on to others?
Any questions with regards to that point? Councillor Craigmont?
Thank you. Through the mayor, chief. Although the attendance is 12 and it's down, is there a minimum number that we should be looking at?
Well, we've never actually in my almost 9 years here, I've never seen it that low. You know, there's times and we haven't reached the summer months, you know, where it's usually peak, right? For firefighters going on leave and such. So that's why it's a bit of a concern for me. Minimum, I could say when I was in professional department, you know, we would respond sometimes with 6, 7 initially, depending on the call, and if it escalated, then of course we'd have like a recall type thing. So professional departments, you know, don't operate with like 24 guys and such like that. Even 12 would be a blessing on the civilian world sometimes, depending on departments and cities. But so like, not panicking. I'm just going to keep an eye on it. And like I said, you know, good on the firefighters. They're very vigilant and notifying each other and that. So I'd keep you updated if anything else comes up and such. But with the firefighter that's leaving at the end of March, reach out to HR we have another firefighter I know in the pool that we could hire that's certified and would be ready to go. So we'd just start another process. So that's also.
Okay, anything further on this point? Okay, sir, if you proceed.
Okay, yeah. So on to fire prevention. So Chief Fire Prevention Officer accomplished the following with 24 inspections, public education. We're still doing the mentorship program. I think we still got about 4 more weeks where a student comes from Fanshawe and you know, kind of shadows the Chief Fire Prevention Officer. So it's a really good program and such. Training, you see all the various training nights we had. 3 firefighters had to send them away to Minden. It's unfortunate that it has to go that far, but that's the only place that you're getting that type of water rescue training, and they're going to receive their NFPA certificates for that. So, and I'm striving to get every firefighter the exact same qualifications. The ice water rescue training, you see that on Saturday. I thought I'd flip you some pictures and such. The boys did an amazing job. Lieutenant Robinson is the go team leader. Very well respected, very knowledgeable. He's led these type of training and that, and you can see the the types of equipment that's been purchased and put to use. So good on him. I included the chaplain's report. He went back to October because he hadn't provided one before. So just a quick update on many of the things that he's part of within the department and how he participates with us and taking pictures and things like that. So I'd mentioned a 20-year fire service exemplary service medal. That's Captain Josh Becker. It's a little overdue. By the time he applied, it's slow. The province is slow for getting these medals out, but congratulations to him. And some spending there is for a capital budget. I received all the hoses that we required. And some water rescue PPE I purchased as well. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Questions for our chief? Councillor Alward.
Thanks, Your Worship. Chief, just a hypothetical for you. So say you received a call on an industrial property that has multiple facilities on it, let's say 3, and you're not sure exactly which facility the alarm is going off in or where the boys need to be to fix the issue. In follow-up, is there some sort of education or correspondence with the industry to say, hey, you need to have like a very specific alarm system that tells us exactly which facility we need to be in first?
Okay, yes, to Councilor Harward. Yeah, good point. A lot of the industries here in town are pretty good. You know, if they get an alarm, and I know like a lot of the companies will say Suregain, you know, with the 3 different plants and such, and the alarm type systems. I know Suregain's pretty good with having personnel at least come out to the road. A lot of times we will get, like through the alarm company, we'll get, say, plant 2 or plant 1 or whatever. So we already have a knowledge of where we're going, but to have individuals come out to the road, guide us in which entrance and such. I'll just say, I'll throw Cascades and Inowak. There's another couple of really good ones. They really assist us and such, and especially with their the evacuations muster point. So I guess that the education part, I think it's there. You know, and it all depends. I know like new systems are going into buildings. Maybe zones aren't identified yet, or they're working on it. But yeah, so vet purchasing is another pretty good one too. So, anyways, yeah, I think it works for overall.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, further questions from council? Okay, thank you for your report. So the suggested motion is FD 05-2025 March monthly report, emergency services be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded. Councillor Alward, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next up, a request for sole sourcing for pagers. Chief Anderson, please.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. So, yeah, the purpose of the report is to propose a sole source procurement of the 15 Motorola 7 pagers. So I'm going to inform you why. And basically, as per the capital budget, which was approved to identify that 15 sets of the Minidor 5s, severely outdated, don't have 2 pager systems, two channels and such. And they're have been in operation 10, 15 years. So we have to purchase the newest one. So I have a 6, which has 2 channels, but they don't make that anymore. Now it's the 7s. That's how old they've been. So, and as you know, pagers are probably our most reliable and primary way of alerting us, besides our phone apps and that. So over the 8 years that I've been here, I've been slowly, when the old pagers have been kind of dying out and such, I've been purchasing the 6s and that to get us up to the 2 channels. And just so you know, why the 2 channels is important is that when they tone us out, when you have the 2 channels, by turning the dial, they can hear all the communications while they're driving in to the call. So if I was already on scene or incident commander's on scene, he's giving updates as they're driving in, they can hear that on the pagers, and so it keeps everybody updated and that with regards to what's happening. So that's one of the main reasons with this two pagers, or sorry, the 2 channels. So we want to do this. So with the purchase of these 15, every firefighter will have that ability. So that's the reason I proposed it in the capital budget. So MRC Wireless, why I want to go with MRC Wireless. So they're in Stratford. They currently maintain all of the Perth County fire system, radios and pagers, including ours all the way to North Perth and such. We have the capabilities to program them, right, and maintain it. And they've done that ever since I've been here. They've done that before. They've been in place well before I was here. So everybody deals with MRC and such. So I'm not saying that there's not another vendor. I know there's another one that's in London, But why I'm going with to stick with Stratford is because it's close by. They know our pagers. They can input the proper frequencies and all that kind of stuff into the pagers, just like they've done for all the other, like I said, departments and ours included. So, yeah. So that's probably my main selling point there as to why. I'd contacted them before. They do have 15 sets of the Minitor 7 pagers, so they are good to go once given approval and such. And that's why I want to move forward on this.
Thank you, sir. Questions from council? Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor then. If there's no questions, the suggested motion is FD 03-2025 sole source procurement request for pages report be received, and the council approves the sole source purchase of Motorola Minitor 7 pages from MRC Wireless as per the 2025 capital budget, and that staff proceed with the project award to MRC Wireless. Is someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded. Councillor Alward. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you for your report, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, Council.
Moving on to 8.7.1 with regard to human resources. Ms. Neckfall, are you there, please?
I am Mayor Strafty. Good evening. So I'm going to keep it brief because I know you've been there a long time. Just a note about recruiting. A couple people have already mentioned about being hired, new people starting. So just want to say that recruiting is really busy. Right now, if you looked, you'd only see 2 positions posted, but there's many processes in play. Off the top of my head, I'd say about 16. So that's the one thing. And then the other thing I'm going to mention is a process improvement. I think those are important to talk about. So Avanti, the human resources information system, Dory has been working on improving the process for T4 slips, which is very timely at this time of year. And historically, they would have been mailed out to employees that were no longer active with the town. But she's worked with Avanti and come up with a solution so that inactive employees can actually access them on the system and print them themselves. So it's a savings of time to the town. Other than that, I think everything's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Neckfall? Councillor Craigmont.
Thank you, Worship. So I know it's been very busy hiring, but I think we've been very successful. So can you kind of give me an overview of your take on why has the town been so positive in being able to get employees to start here?
So I can say that when I'm speaking with people on the phone and doing offers and doing pre-screens, the feedback I'm getting is that people really want to not only work for the town, but they want to support St. Mary's, and they hear wonderful things about the town and about St. Mary's, so they're anxious to work here, which is fantastic.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Great, thank you for your report. So the suggested motion is the HR 03-2025 March monthly report, human resources, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alwood. Is there a seconder? Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Good night. So under item number 9, I don't have anything for emergent or unfinished businesses. I have no notice of motion, which leads us to bylaws. Number 11 with regards to the appointment of a deputy clerk, which I'm very happy for Amanda and her appointment taking over for Morgan, who departed for somewhere else. So the suggested motion is that bylaw 17-2025 be read a first, second, and third time be finally passed by council and signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, seconded by Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Under upcoming meetings, we have 3 listed: April 8th, regular council; April 15th, strategic priorities; April 22nd, regular council. Are there any other meetings anyone to bring up or point out? We have our service club meeting, as Mr. Moran mentioned, tomorrow night. Anything further? Councillor Craig Mao?
Thank you, Worship. Last Wednesday evening, there was a Upper Thames put on a workshop, and it was mainly for, it was about drainage, it was about rotating crops, it was, list all kinds of things, but St. Mary's is kind of in the middle of the watershed, and it was well attended. There was approximately 60 people at the meeting at the PRC,
Wow.
which I thought was really good.
That is good. Okay, thank you. So then that brings up item number 13, which is closed session. So I'll put a motion on the floor that council move into a session that is closed to the public at, what time do I have here? 9:09 p.m. as authorized in the Municipal Act, Section 239-2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded by Councillor Edney. All in favor? Motion's carried.